Good afternoon and a warm welcome to all. First of all, I would like to thank each one of you for registering and joining us today for PHARMASTEER 2022. I feel extremely proud to say that this pioneer virtual orientation program that started in 2020 is on its third consecutive year after it received great accolades and has been organized by the Department of Pharmacology and Therapeutics, St. GS Medical College and KM Hospital, Mumbai, in collaboration with AstraZeneca. We organize such programs to enlighten young minds about medical affairs function in the industry. I, Dr. Apeksha Bhandari, Manager Medical Excellence from AstraZeneca, would like to welcome each and every one of you once again. PHARMASTEER was started with an objective to orient students on the role of pharmaceutical physician in medical affairs. And I had mentioned it last year as well. I wish I had such an initiative during my post-graduation days. This year, based on your feedback that we received the last 2 years, we've kept the agenda based on your feedback. This year, again, we've kept the best parts and customized it and went a notch higher. This year, we have a session from the President of Faculty of Pharmaceutical Medicine, UK, on the 26th of November, and you get to interact with the faculty on the last day, that is 10 December, live, and also listen to some shining examples on the same day. With this short context, let's not keep you or our dignitaries waiting. Let's give a warm welcome to our dignitaries on this virtual platform. I understand it's a virtual platform, but let's welcome the dignitaries with a round of virtual applause. The dignitaries who have joined us live are Mr. Gagandeep Singh, Country President, AstraZeneca Pharma India, Dr. Sandhya Kamath, Professor and Head, Department of Pharmacology and Therapeutics, SGS Medical College and KM Hospital, Mumbai, Mrs. Amarpreet Kaur Ahuja, Country HR Director, AstraZeneca Pharma India, Dr. Padmaja Marathe, Professor Additional, Department of Pharmacology and Therapeutics, SGS Medical College and KM Hospital, Mumbai, Dr. Shirish Joshi, Professor Additional, Department of Pharmacology and Therapeutics, SGS Medical College and KEM Hospital, Mumbai, Dr. Viraj Rajadaksha, Middle East and Africa Area Medical Director, AstraZeneca, Dr. Anil Kukreja, Vice President, Medical Affairs and Regulatory Affairs at AstraZeneca India. Once again, a warm welcome to the dignitaries on the virtual dais. Light, brightness, it represents enlightenment, prosperity, knowledge, and wisdom. So to triumph over darkness, let's inaugurate this program by lighting the lamp. Thank you. Vandana is a Sanskrit word meaning wisdom. Chanting the Saraswati Vandana mantra is believed to remove all obstacles to success in one's education and career. I would request Dr. Viraj Rajadaksha, Middle East Africa Area Medical Director, AstraZeneca, whose professional goal is to be regarded as a pharmaceutical physician who endeavors to spread and practice the highest standards of pharmaceutical medicine both inside the organization as well as externally in the environment, and is also a proud Gozumek, to kindly come forward and recite the Saraswati Vandana. Over to you, Dr. Viraj.
Thank you, Apeksha. And on this very auspicious occasion of the launch of PHARMASTEER 2022, let us pray to Ma Saraswati for happiness, for knowledge and wisdom, for conviction, and more importantly, for humility for all of us, with the chanting of the Saraswati Vandana. Ya kundena tusharaha dhavala, ya shubra vastramruta, ya veena varadanda manditakara, ya shweta padmasana, या ब्रह्मा शुक शंकरा प्रभुदेवै देवै सदा वंदिता सा मा पातु सरस्वती भगवती निशेष जाड्यापहा. Thank you, Apeksha, and let us start with this very knowledgeable program for all of us.
You're on mute, Apeksha.
Yes.
Apeksha, you're on mute.
So sorry for that. That's the always a problem when it comes to virtual. Thank you so much, Amar ma'am. Let's now invite the dignitaries to share the viewpoints on PHARMASTEER and give some words of encouragement to the students. First of all, I would like to request the team to play the video of Dr. Sangeeta Rawat, Dean, Professor and Head Department of Neurology, St. G.S. Medical College and KM Hospital, Mumbai, Chief Epileptologist at Comprehensive Epilepsy Care at KM Hospital and Global Hospital. She is running a highly successful epilepsy surgery program with more than 600 cases operated, catering to a large population at Tertiary Referral Center. President of Indian Epilepsy Association Bombay Chapter, ex-president of Maharashtra Association of Neurologists, chairperson of Epilepsy Subsection at IIM. Unfortunately, she could not join us today due to an urgent commitment, but she was so keen to be a part of this inaugural ceremony that she had shared a video with us to show her support. I would request this team to share the video to the students.
Warm welcome to all the delegates of PHARMASTEER 2022. As I hear from the Department of Pharmacology at KM Hospital headed by Dr. Kamath, that they are holding this with collaboration with AstraZeneca on what are the opportunities in pharma industries. We as doctors and pharma industries always work together for years together. And now developing new drugs with less side effects and affordable prices is at the hands of pharma industries. And definitely we as doctors can help you in getting this goal achieved as early as possible and wherever feasible. And that's how I think there is a great increase in the interest of people joining, the doctors joining the pharma industry. And it's not only from pharmacology, as I gather from the registration list, that there are people from other sides also, that medicine or other branches also are also attending this. So that itself shows that there is a great interest and enthusiasm in doctors who want to do research in pharma, who want to work hands in with pharma industry and help in developing a better drug, a research product, which will definitely help in patient management. And I think this new, I don't know how many years have you started, this is since last 3 years they have this, and I think it's growing, popularity shows that how successful they are. Also there is an added advantage of having a internship at summer internship in AstraZeneca, which is one of the well-known international pharma. So that definitely gives them a hands-on experience on when they will join pharma industry, what they will face and what will be their duties. So they can definitely decide whether they would like to venture into this field in later on in life or not. So I congratulate the Pharmacon department and her whole, Dr. Kamath and her whole team, and also AstraZeneca and the team for organizing this, and I'm sure it's going to be a big success. It is already, when you have a 570 registration, it's a big success already. So wish you all the best, and I wish any support from us is always given to you. As a dean, I will always welcome any such CMEs in future also. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sangeeta. It was very kind of you to share the video to show your support on these students. Now let me ask Mr. Gagandeep Singh, Country President, AstraZeneca Pharma India Limited, who has more than 28 years of experience and started his journey in AstraZeneca in the year 2006, and over the last 16 years held multiple strategic and leadership roles across different regions before coming to India. Mr. Gagandeep Singh has been leading the business and cultural transformation in India, and now will be leading the African cluster as well. I would request him to share his thoughts on the program and what would your advice be to the students. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Apeksha, for inviting me for this wonderful program. At the outset, big thanks to Dr. Sangeeta as well as Dr. Sandhya and all the faculty present here for the opportunity given. One of the things we're very passionate about is partnering with academic institutions, and we couldn't have had a better partner than the St. GS Medical College as well as KEM College. So it's a matter of honor for us. And also, I think every time I've had conversations with the health ministry or with the DOP, one of the asks has always been that how are we bringing the strengths of industry and academia together. And I think today's example, what we've achieved in the last 2 years, and we may move forward, is going to be one of the exemplary examples that we'll definitely be able to talk about, and at some point of time invite them to participate to see how the capability happening and upliftment is happening. So once again, a big thank you to the faculty for the opportunity given to AstraZeneca. I think I'll just take a couple of minutes from a student's perspective. And I know for some of you, it's always, very linear in your thinking about going through a mid school and then, either getting towards the academics or towards clinical. And here is an opportunity which is going to be slightly different. But let me tell you, in terms of impact, it's going to be no less the impact you would make in any other stream that you would follow in your career. We as an industry see medical affairs as a strategic leader and at the center of clinical development and commercialization efforts. Addressing the unmet patient needs as well as the needs of and bridging the gaps between the payers, the policy makers, and in some cases even the provider. That want to understand the advanced clinical practices and impact the patient outcomes. I think closer home in emerging markets, medical affairs assumes even more importance, given the fact that you need to really look at embracing patient-centric healthcare by engaging and partnering with a broader range of stakeholders to really understand the needs and target the patients, because some of the times it's not just about the drug and the disease, even the adherence or even the access or building diagnostic capabilities in a country becomes very important in an emerging scenario. And I think the critical role medical affair plays that can't be understated at all. So once again, it's a very exciting career. Increasingly, we sit at a cusp. I can tell you, I've been 28 years with this industry, and I haven't seen a more vibrant pipeline time across the industry than we see. And I can see a couple of my colleagues nodding their head because we're all very excited with what science is delivering for the patients. And therefore, we need more hands and we need more minds which can help translate this science in the country. With that, Apeksha, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Gagan sir, for those words of encouragement and discussing about how important medical affairs is in their journey. So thank you so much, Gagan sir. I would like to now request our guest, Dr. Sandhya Kamath, Professor and Head, Department of Pharmacology and Therapeutics, AGS Medical College and KEM Hospital, Mumbai. She has an undergraduate and postgraduate teaching experience of 28 years, member of various institutional ethics committee, chairperson of the institutional animal ethics committee, treasurer forum for ethical review committees in India, faculty at workshops on clinical research methodology, GCP, preclinical research and herbal research, has won many awards for research studies and published papers on rational use of drugs, ethics in research, drug utilization studies, and evaluation of medicinal plants in the treatment of various disorders. She is also a co-author of the textbook Pharmacology and Pharmacotherapeutics. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Sandhya Kamath, ma'am. What would your advice be to the students and what should they look forward for this year's PHARMASTEER? Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Apeksha, for that kind introduction. Good afternoon, dear students, and a hearty welcome to all of you. We are really happy and excited to host PHARMASTEER 2022 once again in 2022, of course. When AstraZeneca approached us in 2019 with this initiative, we had no idea that it would be such an immensely successful program. And the testimony to this is that in spite of sending the announcement just 10 days back, we started early this year, we were a little late in sending out. We've received, I was just told, over 640 registrations. And this is a huge leap from last year. So why PHARMASTEER? Many of you after joining the pharma industry would join the medical department. Now, as Dr. Gagan rightly said, over a decade ago, the medical department mainly focused on drug safety, regulatory affairs, and clinical trials. However, the role of medical affairs, I think he has put it very nicely, expanded in today's area of digitalization due to availability of data mining and emphasis on real-world evidence. And now medical affairs plays a very important role in managing and interpreting this data. Today, medical affairs has become the face of the company. Medical affairs not only communicates the real-world applications of drugs to the healthcare providers, but is also the ambassador for patient outcomes. Taking all this into consideration, we thought it would be worthwhile to conduct this orientation program to familiarize you with, as Dr. Apeksha said right in the beginning, to the medical affairs function in the pharma industry, as well as the role of the pharmaceutical physician. All of you must have had a look at the scientific program of PHARMASTEER 2022 before registering for this. And I think Apeksha has also given you, mentioned the salient features of that in the beginning. But I would like to tell you that we've really painstakingly designed the scientific program and include unique topics such as importance of cross-functional collaboration, brand planning and strategic thinking, omni-channel approach, and patient centricity, which are not commonly covered in other pharmacology workshops. We've also taken note, as she rightly said, of the suggestions given by larger participants and included topics like opportunities for you in the industry and how to prepare for an interview, which was a very popular topic last year, a popular session last year. Like you, I'm also eagerly looking forward to all the sessions, and I hope you enjoy this program that for you. Happy learning to you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sandhya ma'am, for those wise words. With this, I would now request Mrs. Amarpreet Kaur Ahuja, Senior Director of Human Resources and heads the Human Resources function for AstraZeneca in India. She's a postgraduate in Human Resources and has experience across prominent international organizations such as Berkeley, TCS, and Northern Trust. In her career spanning over 2 decades, she has led and delivered on several strategic priorities, built cohesive teams which have been driven the growth agenda of the organizations. Diversity and inclusion is closest to Amar, and she's been a strong proponent of building inclusive and diverse workspace. She has led several women's and disability forums in her career. Please join me in welcoming Amarpreet Kaur Ahuja ma'am. Ma'am, any words of encouragement to the students? Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Apeksha, for that kind introduction, and really an honor and a privilege, I would say, to be a part of such a esteemed, group of dignitaries, academicians, and it's absolutely wonderful to be here to connect with the students, and I'm so glad and delighted to hear the fact that we've had whopping success, I would say, in the last couple of years with the number of registrations and people wanting to come and participate in a program like this by itself, actually indicates not just about the popularity of the program, but the need and the interest behind learning. The need to upskill and to be aware of what are the kind of opportunities available, let's say, in a pharmaceutical industry. And while, I heard Dr. Sandhya, you were talking about the different facets, the different pieces that we're going to cover in this program, whether it is the omni-channel approach, the digital, reach, medical affairs as a complete function by itself, a lot of other aspects, which are today the requirement of every student, every employee today, in our organization, we would look at working and focusing on their capability development. And all of you, I would say, are fortunate, to be a part of something as interesting as this, as innovative and creative as this, that you will get those early insights, those early learning nuggets of what is it that is in store. What are some of those important, futures-focused skills in the pharmaceutical industry that will help you and that will give you an edge above the rest in terms of getting an understanding and upskilling yourself, getting yourself ready the moment your programs and your curriculums are getting completed, being very, very ready, future ready to be a part of the pharmaceutical industry. I think that's what this can offer. Over and above, of course, by default, give you a complete deep dive into the medical affairs function, give you a lot more skills and a lot more opportunities to interact with the folks, with the senior leaders, with the academicians, and get the most of this. So I would really encourage each one of you to make the most of it. While, of course, you come in and become a part of AstraZeneca through the internship program is something that we will be, of course, looking forward to, because for us, early talent and the bright sparks, from all of you would be the ones who will come forward, get associated with us, and will work closely with our medical team and the fraternity. So all the very best, I would say, to each one of you, and happy learning, happy experiences that you will gather through this entire journey. Good luck.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Amar ma'am, for those words of encouragement. With this, I would like to invite Dr. Anil Kukreja, Vice President, Medical and Regulatory Affairs, to tell or thank the dignitaries on the dais. Dr. Anil, over to you.
Thank you, Apeksha, and I hope I'm audible now. Okay, thank you so much. So I really want to thank CHGS Medical College and, of course, the KEM Hospital to come along with us and partnering along with us. I want to really thank Dr. Viraj for laying the foundation of this collaboration, and which we have taken it every year to the next level. And most importantly, we are co-creating the whole agenda along with the faculty of CHGS Medical College, taking inputs coming from all the students. So I know all the dignitaries have spoken, and I really want to thank Gagan sir for joining, and Amarpreet ma'am also for joining this program. I think it's really looking forward to that. But most importantly, I also want to thank PHARMASTEER core team who has put in all efforts to bring all of us together. Thanks Apeksha, and thanks the entire team of PHARMASTEER as well. So let's begin the program. We should not be coming in the way of the academic program. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Anil, for that. With this, let's start with the scientific sessions with the general guidance to the students. And thank all the dignitaries for coming here and sparing your time here. Thank you. So general guidance, every session is scheduled for 30 minutes. You can ask the question related to the topic during the session using the chat box option, which would be answered during the last 10 minutes. There would be an online assessment of 90 minutes. The link will be provided towards the end of the program to students, that is on the 10th of December, who are eligible for internship based on the college and university requirements. Participants should complete the assessment on or before 12th December. Top 5 will be given internship opportunities in AstraZeneca India. The topic of the poster will be provided to you, to all the students via mail on Monday, and the general guidance will be shared to you on Monday via mail as well. Kindly note, this time all students are eligible for posters. Kindly submit your poster by 12th of December. Top 10 would be asked to present the poster to a panel, and based on it, top 3 will be given awards. This year, live faculty interaction is on the last day, that is on 10 December, and who have registered telling that they were interested in interacting with the faculty, the link will be shared to them before that particular event. With all these guidance, I'm extremely delighted to pronounce the first speaker for the scientific session, who is none other than Dr. Renuka Munshi, Professor and Head, Department of Clinical Pharmacology, TN Medical College and BYL Nair Charitable Hospital, Mumbai. Chairperson on the IRBs of PD Hinduja and KTH Hospitals and IIT Bombay. Member Secretary, Institutional Ethics Committee, TNMC and BYL Nair Charitable Hospital, Mumbai. Member of FSSAI Expert Committee to provide no objection for conducting human intervention studies on novel or non-specified food ingredients. Member of the DTAP subcommittee to evaluate fixed dose combinations considered as irrational. Ma'am, over to you to take us through the session of drafting the protocol do's and don'ts. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Apeksha. And at the outset, I would like to thank Dr. Sandhya Kamath, Dr. Padmaja Marathe, and the team at say GS Medical College and KEM Hospital for inviting me to be part of this PHARMASTEER this year. And of course, AstraZeneca, the entire team, Dr. Viraj, Dr. Kukreja, and the others for thinking and having such a lovely program where medical residents, especially from pharmacology, get an opportunity to know what happens on the other side and not only in academics. So I've been asked to take a lecture on the do's and don'ts of protocol writing. Have I been given the, I can share my screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so is the full screen on, visible?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for that. So without much ado, I will go and start my lecture. So you are aware that, when you say health sciences, these health sciences are of different types. I mean, just in this of health, you have basic science, you have clinical research, you have epidemiological research, all types of research that can be done. Just a second. Okay. So all types of health studies that can be done, out of which, when you look at clinical research, which is what most of us pharmacologists do, we're looking at different kind of studies. We look at incidence, prevalence, surveys, screening, diagnostics if required. We are developing research instruments in terms of questionnaires, and of course clinical trials. So when we talk as pharmacology, we do look at all these topics in clinical research. Now, when we plan our clinical research, we basically have to have a research question. That research question is a statement of the goal of the research project. And based on that research question, we develop a hypothesis, and then we have the null hypothesis, the alternate hypothesis. And based on that, we go to developing a protocol. Sorry. Okay, sorry, it's just got hung for a moment. So when you say protocol, the definition as per ICH E6 guideline for GCP states that the protocol is a document that describes the objectives, design, methodology, statistical consideration, and organization of study. Now, it can also give, in most cases, in fact, I would say 99% of the cases, you also get the background and the rationale for the trial. But if not required, in certain cases, it can be put in as an appendix. But the main point is that it describes how the study is to be done. So in simpler terms, it is a written mechanism that describes how a trial design will be implemented. It is documentation of all the procedures that are to be carried out. And it is a detailed set of instructions on how the study investigators, whether single-centric or multi-centric, are to do the study. So what is the main purpose of a protocol? It ensures that the study is conducted and the data is collected, analyzed, integrated in a scientifically rigorous, consistent, ethical, and timely manner. It specifies the responsibility of the study team. It provides detailed instructions to the study team, and it standardizes the study procedures across all the sites. So this is very important. Once that protocol is ready, it is finalized, it has been approved by the ethics committee, and in case of a regulatory study, it's approved by the regulator. You normally do not amend the protocol as per the convenience of the investigator. Once it's done, it has to be followed by the entire study team, whether single site or multiple sites, as is. Unless there are some amendments to protect the participants or based on interim analysis, that's a different thing that is done. But otherwise, at site level, you do not normally modify the protocol. How detailed should a protocol be? Ideally, very ideally, if you talk to researchers, they want a simple protocol. Everybody wants something that just tells you what is to be done in the most simplest of manner. But you, of course, when it's being done as a regulatory study or multi-centric, you need to be very detailed. It has to be that in detail so that anybody who reads that protocol knows what is being done in the study and when it is being done, and when the study procedures, when the dosing, when the parameters are being assessed, all that has to be there. So it's a matter of judgment. It can be just 5 pages, or of course, in case of regulatory studies, it can be 50 to 100 pages. What do you do when you are the researcher, when you are the investigator? You first plan your study. So when you're planning what you're going to do, once you have your research question in mind, you know what you want to do, you have your objective in mind, you plan your schedule of the visit, of the study. What you're going to do at the first visit, how you're going to screen your participants, what you're going to do at the follow-ups. All this comes in. So you have you make a small flow chart or framework, skeleton as you can call it, where you put in what are the points you're going to cover in your study. So these are the basic points. Of course, the bigger the protocol, the more detailed it gets, but this is what you need to actually have, this kind of a framework, and you fit it in, and then you go ahead writing in detail. Now, when you look at the contents of a protocol, you have lots of points. And this is basically more from the regulatory protocol kind of purview, where you look at all the points, are making sure all these points are covered. So right from title page, general instructions, summary, content page, everything. We'll go in most of them in the next few slides, but everything has to be transparent and documented, so that later it could not be that there's some ambiguity on how a certain thing is supposed to be done. So when you write the title page, of course, you start with the protocol title, you have an identifying number, you have version and a date. And that version and date will keep changing as the protocol gets refined. So even when you're writing your first protocol, whether for your dissertation or for a sponsor, you start with version 1, then you go to version 1.1, 1.2, or version 2.3, that depends on your style. But your version tells you how many corrections your protocol has gone through. And that's important. Sometimes you can start, say, 1st of January, and it doesn't get approved till May, June, July. It can be anything. That depends on how many corrections have been made, how many reviews have been done, and how it has been really modified to make it more and more, proper and understandable. When you're writing the title, of course, I'm sure you all know the PICO criteria. It is nice to put that in. Keep a comprehensive title so that it's understandable. Just saying a clinical trial to assess blah, blah, blah. Is it an open study? Is it a randomized clinical trial? Is it a double-blinded? What is the comparator? It's always better to put it down. So if you follow the PICO criteria while writing the title, it makes life easy for the reviewer to look at. And then, of course, if there are any amendments, those amendment numbers have to come in. So it's amendment 1, 2, 3, and the date when it was amended. And then, of course, the name and contact details of the investigators, the sites, the sponsor details, and, of course, the clinical laboratories and collaborating departments. If you're working with, say, the Department of Pathology, Microbiology, or you are sending it to a central lab, all those details need to come in your title page. Then you have the background or the rationale for the study, which basically describes what you are studying, why you are studying it, what are the loopholes or the limitations of the previous work done. And you summarize your literature, talk about what is known, and then what are the gaps in that literature. And then you rationalize the need for your study. So it's important. And of course, you need to justify why you're choosing that comparator and which comparator you have chosen, and the statement of compliance with the protocol with the GCP and regulator. And it's important that this background should not be more than ideally 2, max 3 pages. Do not go overboard. Sometimes, I've seen our projects, especially PhD or dissertation projects, where the background is 10 pages and then the methodology is just 1 page. So make sure that your background is crisp, is comprehensive. It just has, the relevant matter. Do not go overboard. To try to explain and give all the literature possible. Your literature should be just the relevant literature that is relevant to your study, not everything that has been done in the past 10 years. Okay, your review must make it clear what's missing in the existing research, what knowledge gap will your project fill in. Now, when you're documenting literature, most of the time, this is what students tend to do. You make a shopping list. You just say, so-and-so, like McNamara has shown that Frankel appliances produces an increase in mandibular length of 3 millimeters. Somebody else showed something else, somebody else showed something else. You just making a shopping list, 1, 2, 3, these 3, 4, 5 researchers found this information, and hence this is what the answer, gap in the literature is. It's always better to write it in a better manner. So if you compare your left hand side with the right hand side of the slide and you just read through it, you'll understand that you have taken the effort to understand what those researchers have done, and then you have made a précis of it. So this is important. It's important. So just having the matter is great, but how you put it forward is equally important. Now, your study objectives, of course, you can be looking at a new treatment, new procedure, new indication or route of administration, or you're looking at 2, 3 different treatments and you want to know which one is the best, or additional data on safety or efficacy. You can have a different kinds of objectives. What you need to remember is you should follow the KISS principle. Keep your objectives simple, specific, and straightforward. SMART, I think all of you all know: specific, measurable, accessible, realistic or relevant, and time-based. So it's important that your study objectives are very clear and about telling the whoever is reading it protocol about why you are doing this study and what is the study objective. Ideally, you should have one primary objective, especially if you're doing your dissertation. Keep it simple, keep it a single objective. You try to put 4, 5 objectives in the first, in your primary objective, you tend to have issues in terms of sample size calculation, in terms of achieving that objective. And that primary objective is the main crux of your protocol, which decides what your study design should be, it decides your methodology, your study design, etc. Secondary objectives, exploratory objectives are, it's always nice to have them. So, but if you do not achieve them, if you do not achieve those objectives, it is not a problem. The primary objective, you have to get a clear-cut, statistically significant yes or no as an answer to your primary objective. So just, you need to make sure you ask the right question. So now in COVID times, you have lots of studies done on COVID vaccines. Now the boosters have come in. So you can have a question like, your primary objective is your research hypothesis. You want to assess the efficacy of the booster dose of COVID vaccines against COVID-19. So your research, your objective will be, does the administration of the booster dose increase the incidence of COVID-19 infections, hospitalizations, and deaths? This is how your question could be raised. Your research hypothesis, your research question. Second is, study the effect of easy access of emergency contraceptive pills on promiscuity. So you want to, your study research question is that you want to evaluate the effect of OTC purchase, that's over-the-counter purchase of emergency contraceptive pills, on unwanted or teen pregnancies. Both these articles have been picked up from NEJM. So I'm talking about the second research question. You can make it as 2 groups of women, those who use OC pills at home and those who visit the physician for OC pills. And your primary objective and your secondary objective will be different. So your primary objective is basically assessing the frequency of use of emergency contraception and assessing the incidence of unwanted pregnancies in those who do not seek such or do not use OC pills, versus the secondary objective of looking at the safety of these OC pills. So you make your research hypothesis, you define your research question, and then your primary and secondary objectives if needed. Participant selection is really, really important. Based on your research objective, based on your research question, you have to decide which kind of participants you are going to enroll in your study. So your inclusion criteria and exclusion criteria is equally important. Your inclusion criteria tells actually which type of patients you want. What are the characteristics? What are the characteristics of the patient, of the disease? Are you going to take patients who are also on other medication, conmeds, or previous treatment? Do they need a washout? What kind of other situations you're going to be acceptable to allow these patients to come into your study? If you're doing a diabetic study, if you're doing a hypertensive study, what about the screening results? Will you take those who are, fitting certain criteria or not? And exclusion is basically, we know that mostly pregnancy, lactation, severe renal hepatic disorders, hematological disorders, neurological, psychiatric, etc. What you need to remember is your exclusion criteria does not become a mirror image of your inclusion criteria. Just you say patients between the age of 18 to 60 years, exclusion should not be those below 18 and above 60. So remember that you do not do mirror imaging. You just put in exactly what you want, the type of patients. Either you make a very homogeneous crowd or you allow a heterogeneous crowd to be in your study depending on the phase of your study. And those who you will absolutely not take in your study comes in your exclusion criteria. Then how your trial design. So your justification, you need to justify the number of participants, your sample size calculation, basically depending on the phase of the study. What kind of trial design are you using? Parallel, crossover, cross-sectional, longitudinal, cohort, case control, anything. I mean, depends on the type of your research question. In case you're doing an intervention study, you're going to do randomization. You need to put in the randomization details and how you're going to randomize. So previously, of course, coin toss, lottery, day of the week, all those were acceptable. Today, of course, the only two acceptable methods are either random number table or a computer-generated randomization. So these are the two that are used for interventional studies, and you need to have a method of allocation concealment. You need to put it down how those random numbers that you have generated, how is it going to be concealed from both the investigator and the participant, depending on double blind. In case of only single blind, only the participant. So the different methods that you can use are listed here. It is always nice to put in allocation concealment methodology in case of your study. Then your comparator, you need to justify your comparator group. If you are, especially if you're taking placebo, why are you taking placebo? Today, placebo is not really considered as a good comparator. Yes, in the early phases of the clinical trials, you do use placebo because you want to make sure your drug works. But many times ethics committees raise issues about why do you need a placebo unless there's nothing else available. So you need to justify why you're using a placebo. As even in case of standard of care, sometimes there are issues because when you do studies which are done as multicentric studies internationally in studies, the standard of care should be that, of course, that is the best of care in a country, in that hospital. But if you go by the CIOMs, they would prefer that the standard of care is the best standard of care that could be given, and that may not be available in your country. So you need to be aware, what standard of care and why you're selecting this standard of care needs to be justified. Is it just that this particular comparator drugs are available in our country? They are, so that's why we're using this. All needs to come in. If you're doing a study on a therapeutic procedure, you need to give details of that and what will there be a comparator or not? Issues sometimes come up, especially if you're doing with, any therapeutic procedure, surgical procedure, interventions, or you're giving drugs that are, not easy to mask, not easy to for you to do a blinding. It's important that you address this issue in your protocol of why it cannot be done, and hence what kind of allocation concealment you're planning to do if possible, or you're going to do an open study. So what will be your comparator? Now, when you talk about the study treatment, you need to if you're doing an intervention study or giving a drug study or therapeutic procedure, all those details have to come in your protocol. The name, the dose, the regimen, how you're going to give it. Are you doing a dose titration? Are you doing a wash-in, a wash-out? How long are you going to follow up? What is the treatment period? How many visits are going to be there during the study? Which are the permitted and contraindicated for conmeds that are going to be allowing you need to talk about rescue medication also in case the patient, suppose you're doing a diabetic study, patient not responding, his sugars are always on the high side at every visit. What's your rescue medication? Is that going to be a temporary rescue? Or are you going to withdraw the patient? All that needs to come into your protocol. And the timing of the procedures, the observations, assessments that will be done at every study visit, all that needs to be documented and listed in the protocol, and the document and how it will be documented, that will come in the CRF for the case record form. Now, the investigational product, that's equally important because you need to know, and understand that IP has to be maintained at a particular temperature, has to be maintained under lock and key so that it's not accessible to everybody. So the packaging, the labeling, the storage, the expiry, all this has to be mentioned and in the protocol. how are you going to dispense, what happens to the medicines that are returned by the patients if there's some leftover medicines, accountability procedures, how are you going to ensure it? Is that going to be just by pill count? Are you going to do any blood investigations or urine investigations to confirm compliance of the patient with the IP? What's going to be, how's the storage of the unused and returned drugs going to be done? Will it be kept in an AC room, in a fridge, or just at room temperature? Is important to know, because based on that, the investigators need to know how to store it. Again, talking about in case there's a reason for you to decode or to unblind the participant, the procedures for that and what is to be done in case a decoding is done has to be mentioned in the protocol. And of course, as I said, the study procedures have to be listed in detail. You have that chart that comes in, which you maintain, and we keep, when you're doing the study, you keep a printout with you so that you know that you've not missed out on any visit parameter procedure when you're doing the study visit for a patient. Again, we talked about objectives. Your endpoints again will be similar to the objectives. So when you're looking at outcomes, the endpoint selection is very important. If you have a primary objective, your primary endpoint, secondary objective, secondary endpoint. Are you looking at multiple endpoints? Are you looking at one composite endpoint, like in case of wound healing or burns or any other, say, cardiac outcomes? You're looking at a composite endpoint. That's important to document. You're looking at clinical endpoints, surrogate, the sensitivity and specificity of your endpoints is important, of the research instruments is important, validity, accuracy, precision. All these points come into it. And of course, for academic studies and investigator initiated studies, the time, the effort, the cost, and the complexity of your endpoint is needs to be really justified, because mainly the cost, because if you want to do something really, some very elaborate lab investigation, you need to have the funds to do it. And most important, the clinical relevance of your endpoints. It can be statistically significant, but may not be clinically relevant. So that's important to remember, because if the clinicians do not accept at the end of your entire study, they say, but it's not really achievable, or it's not really doable in my patients, the entire study is wasted. Now, again, how you going to do, what type of patients are you going to do a per protocol analysis? Are you going to do an intention to treat analysis? Needs to be there. And for which objective and which parameter you're going to do, which kind of analysis is important? Or are you going to take, so when you're saying intention to treat, are you going to take every patient who is randomized? Are you doing per protocol? Then what points are you going to consider in the analysis is important to document right at the beginning. Again, safety assessment, define your adverse events and SAEs. How often is the monitoring schedule going to be done for safety assessment? How are you going to document, going to follow up, how long you're going to follow up. Many times what happens is when there are, especially when there are SAEs, sometimes the protocol doesn't tell you how long you follow up that patient for. The patient may recover within 5 days, 15 days, may not recover for a long time. How long do you follow up? Especially in 1 or 2 cases we had seen where, the patient did not comply with the contraceptive instructions given to her and got pregnant. And, then we were wondering, because how long do we follow up? We had to follow her up till she delivered a baby and ensured that the baby was healthy, because she had received the study medications, in the early part of her pregnancy. So these are important points, because sometimes something just comes out of the blue and you don't know then how you're going to manage that adverse event, or especially the serious adverse event. The reporting timelines, I think we all know the regulatory reporting timelines, the ethics reporting timelines, also the 24 hours and 14 days for academic studies is equally important. And the principal investigator needs to inform the ethics committee of these SAEs within the time limits given. In case of SAEs, the issue comes of compensation. Case of regulatory studies, of course, we know there's a proper guideline and a rule that tells us how to do it. But in case of academic studies, the ICMR guidelines also talks about compensation. And we need to be aware that when we do academic studies, in case of an SAE, we may have to compensate the patient even in academic studies. And of course, discontinuation, when would we like to discontinue a trial participant, non-compliance, adverse event, etc. All this will come. How you're going to do your data collection is equally important. What you're going to do? Is it an interview? Is it an observation? Is it a record review? Who's going to do it? Have they been trained on that? What are the tools that you're going to be using? Questionnaires, any forms, any, any other tools that you have. So it's important whether you're going to do face-to-face interviews or you're going to do telephonically or self-administered questionnaires. All these are equally important to document and then comply with it. How you want to collect the samples for the study also is important to be written down. Is it on fasting? Is it on random, etc., etc. Withdrawal of patients, again, when will you withdraw a patient? Are you going to replace that patient, or is it that once withdrawn, it's you do not replace that patient in the study? How long will you follow up with the patient? I've already mentioned. And in case of medical emergencies, what is the management plan? There has to be a management plan for managing serious events. Once you've done that, you make a flow chart, you put that flow chart down, which tells you how the patients will progress. Similar to a consort, but consort normally comes after you've done your study and when you're publishing. But similar to a consort, you make a flow chart of how your study should go, a detailed flow chart of how your study should be done. It makes sense so that you also can keep, it's a ready reckoner for you to constantly keep checking and making sure you're abiding by the points given in the protocol. Statistics, again, statistical consideration, sample size, power determination, all these have to be done a priori. You cannot, think of changing your sample size or your power and later, once your study is started, unless you've done an interim analysis and you plan for that interim analysis and you've adjusted your power and your sample size based on that fact that you're going to do 1 or 2 or 3 interim analysis. You have to define your responders, non-responders, when you'll consider the patient as a dropout, etc., etc. And you have to document how you will handle withdrawals, protocol deviations, missing or spurious data, multicentric data analysis, etc., and the rules for stopping. Suppose at an interim analysis, or you do a futility analysis, and you find that there's no point in going ahead with the study. You need to have the rules for stopping the study, and that needs to be there in your book. So just to quote R.A. Fisher, who said that to call in the statistician after the experiment is done may be no more than asking him to perform a post-mortem examination. He may be able to say what the experiment died of. So it's important that you talk to the statistician when you are planning the study, not after you have the data in your Excel sheet and then go to the statistician and tell him now you come up with some magic numbers. Okay, so talk to a statistician at the beginning when you are, this is even relevant for dissertations, or academic studies that are done, so that the sample size calculation, what you need to do, and the statistician will help you with that. Referencing, there are 2 styles, I think we all know, Harvard and Vancouver. Most of us, follow the Vancouver style. And of course, while writing the references, you have a lot of software today that makes it easy, the Mendeley Reference Manager. And what is important is, as I said earlier, do not go around giving laundry lists of references. The most relevant references should be documented. Max, the rule of the thumb is max 20. So you just don't go on and on giving, too many references. Case record form is always important, because once you got your protocol in place, your case record form will only capture study relevant details based on the protocol. It will just make sure that whatever you said in your protocol is now written in an objective manner and is followed. So you have a lot of protocol-driven facts that will come in, and you need to make sure that all these are in the, investigator name, the consent process, consent dates, eligibility criteria, how you give in the treatment, the baseline assessment, everything has to be documented. You can have visit while share protocols, or, in the most of this which are followed. And today, with the eCRFs coming in, life has actually become so much easier to do this, but everything has to be made sure that it is in the CRF. Adhere to ethical principles, of course. We have the ICMR 2017 guidelines, the informed consent process, which is looked by the ethics committee. Make sure that the informed consent process is documented well. The questions asked by the participant before saying yes to the study, the questions that you ask the participant to confirm that he has understood the study, all that needs to be documented. Administrative aspects, of course, is again a big list of points that need to be mentioned and kept in the protocol. One important is the publication policy is equally important, because sometimes it happens that investigators tend to want to, especially in a multi-subject study, sometimes the investigator wants to publish his own data of his side. It's important that this is allowed and permitted by the sponsor, and it's all done pre-initiating of the study. Protocol violations, quality control, quality assurance, the budget, etc. All this needs to be there as appendices in the protocol, including these points, as I said, the study flow chart, the synopsis, case record form. In case of laboratories, what are their, validations and certificates, all that needs to be there. What you need to remember is when you prepare your protocol, you will be preparing the informed consent document, the case record form. Make sure that everything, there is consistency across all these documents. Make sure that there is consistency across all the documents, so that it should not be that the case record form says something, the informed consent says something else, and your protocol is totally different from both these documents. Protocol amendments, as I said, it mostly comes in only when there's a really rationale for amending the protocol technically. Administrative points also may be there, but mainly if there's a technical reason for you amending the protocol, you need to put in a summary of changes, the number and date, who have authorized to approve the amendments, and the changes, whether the same changes have been made in the case record form in the informed consent document. And these need to be submitted both in case of regulatory studies to the regulator and of course to the ethics committee for approval. Now, just to finish, I think 2 minutes more. I think you'll all know about the Equator Network. It's a really fantastic website where you can access all these documents, all the documents on which kind of studies you are going to do, observational, randomized trials, study protocols, everything is there, and they give you real good recommendations and access to how to write a good protocol depending on your study. So just I'm talking about SPIRIT because it is meant for clinical trials. It's just defining protocol items, what you need. So you can just go on to this website, get access to SPIRIT. Of course, it's 2013. It's the article on the same is mentioned in the reference below by British Medical Journal. And it tells you, the table 1 gives you all the checklist of what all you need to have in your protocol. So whatever I've said, it's all there in this document, a really, easy, accessible, and understandable document to use. It also tells you how to make this flowchart, as I was saying, when you do it, what you're doing. So it's like a framework. It's a ready skeleton that you get. You don't have to really take the effort. Just fill in the relevant points as applicable to your study. Just to end with some tips on writing a good protocol. As I said, the SPIRIT document, you get documents on the NIH website. There are other universities, especially in the US, which are, gives you the protocol, the template for protocols. Use that template. Depending on how, which phase of the study or you're doing academic studies, use the template. Always makes your life much, much easier. Include all the relevant data, what has been done till now, as I said, but only the relevant data. All the study-related activities that the participants will undergo should be mentioned in detail. Talk to others. When you prepare your protocol or whatever, talk to others. Take an independent scientific or medical review of the protocol from colleagues who are not involved in the study, so that whatever they cannot understand, if they find issues, you can get it clarified. Independent review is always nice and makes it easier for you to improve your protocol. When you're doing, of course, regulatory studies or others, you can think of cost minimization, risk minimization when you're talking about children and vulnerable population. And as I said, all the study documents should be uniform and consistent with each other. So it's important. And what you should not do is basically don't have too broad a name. We want to change the world. We all want to change the world. We want to make a better environment for our children, etc. That broader name cannot be achieved in one study protocol. So you have, and also, as I said, do not have too many primary objectives, because you have to achieve those primary objectives. Pay attention to literature and keep reading literature. Just because once your protocol is done and you're going to start your study, you can say my work's done. because literature keeps coming up at every time point. And sometimes your study can take 6 months, your study can for more than a year. And in that time point, there may be one recent article that has come up and has done a similar kind of study, and all your effort is down the drain. It happens. I know of a friend who was doing his PhD, and he had to he was just in the giving his viva for his PhD, and another person published an article which was on the exact same lines as his PhD. So he had to go back and now add another some points, some other objective, so that it became different from what that person had already quoted. So this you cannot just do your literature search at the time of writing the protocol. Keep updating it. Okay. Again, sample size calculation is very important, because you need to make sure that you achieve something at the end of your study. You're spending your time, your effort, your money into it. Make sure it's there, and have a statistical analysis plan. It is really, really important. You can't change it as per today. I'll do parametric, then I don't get good data, so I go to non-parametric. It's not something you do. Another important rule, as I said, technical, yes, important. Language and grammar is equally important. Your punctuation mark should be in the right place. Sentence construction should be done well. And please proofread. If you don't want to, because you're tired of seeing the same document over and over again, ask some friend of yours to proofread your document, because otherwise we'll get something like this. Okay, and we have seen this happening in some student dissertations, of course, but that's important. So it's important to communicate a clear, complete, detailed plan of a study in your protocol. It should contain all the essential elements. It should describe the intention to the ethics committee, to the institution, of course, on to the sponsor. And you try to minimize the amendments and the burden that it will come on the investigator and the EC, because every amendment has to undergo approval, review and approval process, and make the investigator then change the way of working, inform the participants. All that comes into the picture. So a good protocol does not guarantee good results if executed badly, but a bad protocol definitely ensures bad results, even if executed rightly. Okay, so that's important. And thank you, and all the best with protocol writing. I can see, I think, some questions in the chat box. Should I be addressing them directly?
Ma'am.
Oh, sure.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Renuka, ma'am, for such a lovely topic and the presentation. This topic
Hello, good afternoon, I think, for the team in attending the session. So it's for me a pleasure to be part of this wonderful program. I think that is a great initiative. So congratulations for all the organizers and thanks for giving me the opportunity of participating in this. I would have loved to have a kind of program like this to be impossible to attend at the moment of finishing my medical school, because the career in the pharma industry was not something very clear, and these kind of initiatives are really valuable, because we have a lot to do, a lot to offer as medical doctor and as health professionals for this industry. And as you mentioned, I am a medical doctor by education, and I did some assistential, during 5-6 years. But then I was captured by the clinical research. So my first love in the pharma industry was related to clinical research, and was my entry door. I started working as a clinical research physician in a big institute dedicated to clinical research, and after that I decided to move to the pharma industry. First, working several years in contract research organizations, and then I moved to the pharma industry. So more than, yes, let's say at this moment, half of my experience in the industry is related to clinical research, and the other half to medical affairs. So I think that is good to understand the both sides of the roles that are the more common roles for medical professionals in the industry, and for sure the two entry roles are as a CRA or MSL in general in the pharma industry. So I will try to share with all of you, which is my understanding of the role of a professional working in medical affairs in clinical research, which are the advantages and disadvantages of. I think that I never find a disadvantage on working in clinical research, but let's try to explore together this topic. So, moving to the next slide, please, Apeksha. So these are some topics that I would like to visit during my presentation. So first of all, to understand a bit more, which is the life cycle of a pharmaceutical product, and how much you need to understand the clinical research or research in general across the whole life of a product, which are the main roles and responsibilities of these two functions, the medical affairs and the clinical operations functions. How we from medical affairs can collaborate on achieving the objectives of clinical operations and clinical research teams, and why for us it's really important to be involved in the registration clinical trials implementations in our countries, which are the basics of clinical research that every medical affairs professional needs to know. And who are the benefits from this? Which are the benefits of this joint approach? So these are the topics that I would love to visit with all of you. And please, I don't know. I think that the modality is to keep the questions by the end. But if you have an urgent question, I will be very happy to address during the presentation. So moving to the next slide, please. So data generation, that at the end is the ultimate result of clinical research, is an activity that is being done across the whole life cycle management of a product. And sometimes that data generation is conducting to a registration of an indication or a product, but sometimes is like supporting the whole adoption of the new indication or the new product in a given population, in a given country. So the research concepts should be taken in consideration across the life cycle management of a product. And this is a very nice, I think, and simple classification of the key areas of focus that we have, that I took from a pharma publication. So in the early phases during the clinical development and when the mechanism of action of a product has been determined, the companies are working and the teams in the companies are working in finding the best indications, the lead indication that is related to the disease and the research question that is more important to address to determine which will be the first indication for that given product, but also understanding which will be the other indications, that the secondary indications that the same product could be offering for the population, and this is related to the medical needs. So at this moment is probably the first interaction where the team working in clinical research and the teams working in medical affairs or that are closer to the assistential arena and the medical practice are interacting, because we need to decide in a very smart way the sequencing of the strategies, or the sequencing of the indications that we will be pursuing related to the unmet medical needs that we have in the clinical practice. So in this kind of phase of designing the whole clinical program, is key to have interactions between the clinical teams and the medical affairs teams. Of course, this is being done at high level in the global teams, but both the global and the operational teams are fed by the information and the insights that the local teams are collecting. And also when the proof of concept is established for a given indication, there are additional planning, planification that should be done in terms of how the drug will be studied. It will be studied in a monotherapy or in combination studies to increase the strength of the evidence that we are generating and making the product even more competitive. So this is the first kind of interactions that are at the very, very high level in the leadership teams, but always in a good company, these leadership teams are being fed by the ideas, by the insights that are coming from each local marketing company. And as a product should be launched at the end and should be fitting the needs from populations, diverse populations across the world, each marketing company, each country counts to bring the accurate information that will allow to pursue the right indications. This is the planification phase of the clinical development, and with that we start the next step, that is the implementation of the clinical programs, where we work very close very close at the local marketing companies in the implementation. And I will focus my presentation and my discussion today in that phase, that is from the moment the phase 3, the registration clinical trials are decided to be implemented in a country until the moment this product is launched in the country. There are a very close and important interaction between the two teams. And something else that we are doing at that moment from medical affairs in the middle of the life cycle management is adding the evidence that is making the label more strong, because it's obtaining additional information on the evidence gaps that we can identify from the clinic, from what is established in the clinical protocol and what will be the indication that we will have coming from that protocol versus what is happening in the clinical practice in our countries. So this kind of evidence gap in identification is the responsibility of medical affairs, and addressing and closing those gaps through that data generation is a key responsibility of medical affairs. And last but not least, in the late stages, so when we are being close to the loss of exclusivity, we need to generate the evidence or the data that related to our specific brand that has that supports the loyalty to a given product, and this is being done again through initiatives where medical affairs colleagues are interacting with other part of the company, like the patient support programs responsible and the commercial colleagues to bring the information that will support the last phase of the product in the marketing company. So across the whole life cycle management of the pharmaceutical product, data generation is a key activity that guarantees the success of the company. And us, as medical affairs colleagues, needs to be very strong in understanding the principles of clinical research and data generation to be strong professionals and to serve to our objectives. So moving to the next slide, I think that is a very concise summary. So in the preclinical, we are identifying the lead and secondary indications, and this is related to the unmet medical needs that medical affairs need to manage in a very strong way. During the clinical, implementation of the clinical trials, we need to work very close to the clinical operations teams to guarantee the timely results delivery. During the pre and post-launch, we as medical affairs needs to work, and is our main role in closing evidence, confidence, and clinical practice gaps. And again, here is where we are leading the research, and we are answering the questions that are coming from our local marketing companies or countries. And last but not least, at the moment of the loss of exclusivity, we need to generate the data about how to improve patient outcomes and experiences with our own products. And we as medical affairs are the only function that is interacting and having different responsibilities across the whole life cycle management of a pharmaceutical product. And we have a responsibility that is to understand very well the process of generating data. Next slide, please. So this is a summary, so how local medical affairs is interacting with different functions within the company, so but also in an external way. So in the left side, we have which are the main interactions that we have within the company. So of course, local medical affairs is interacting with local clinical operations teams, but also through the different teams, we are interacting with the global medical affairs teams and with the global clinical operations teams and global development. But we have a very, very important responsibility in interacting with the external world as well, with the clinical research teams in the different sites. And this is not just the investigators, but also the pharmacists, the study coordinators, the institutional review boards to understand the needs and the insights from all this group of professionals, and also building the wider referral network, because not always we are working in indications where we can find the patients easily, and we can't open 100 sites to where we are enrolling one patient per site. So we need to work very well in providing that referral network to our colleagues in clinical operations to facilitate the enrollment in as few sites as possible in order to make a more efficient approach for the implementation of the study. Next slide, please. So in this slide, I would like to summarize which are the main roles and responsibilities from the two teams when we are launching a new product or a new indication. So if you can do the clicks, please, I think that we can disclose the whole slide. So in terms of medical affairs, As mentioned, we have as the first responsibility the identification on which are the evidence, confidence, and clinical practice gaps between what is delivered by the indication coming from the protocol and the registration clinical trial versus what is happening in the clinical practice in our countries. So to have a successful launch of a product or indication, we need to close those gaps in a timely manner. So for that, we are responsible for designing an evidence strategy and implementing that evidence, real-world evidence studies in order to close the gaps in, on the evidence that is needed to make the indication suitable for the country. Of course, we are responsible for having continuous medical education for the given indication for the new standard of care in order to prepare the scientific and practitioners in scientific community and practitioners in our own countries to receive the new paradigms where the new products or new indication will fit perfectly to address the unmet medical need. And for that, we need to be responsible for publishing the data that we are generating in these real-world evidence studies and disseminate that evidence. For what, at the end, for achieving our last goal, that is to have the new paradigms incorporated as part of the standard of care in the clinical practice in our country. So this is the last objective that we are pursuing for having a successful launch of a new product or a new indication. In terms of clinical operations, which are the responsibilities that they have for launching the new products and indications? So the implementation of the study. And for that, they need to start identifying the right sites and the right investigators according to the clinical trial requirements and the indication that we are looking for. They are responsible for obtaining the requested approvals from the Ministry of Health, from the ethics communities, from the institutional review boards. So this is a key activity from the clinical operations teams where they are working close to the regulatory colleagues. They are responsible for the site recruitment, supporting the sites in recruiting the patients on time, for activating those sites with the required approvals in place, for training the site, for monitoring the good implementation of the protocol in each of the sites, and to keep them motivated in the enrollment and the delivery of the data. But also, in this way, the clinical operations teams are responsible to have the sites ready for regulatory authorities or inspections or internal audits at any moment. So this is another key responsibility from our clinical operations teams. And the last objective and the last responsibility, or the whole responsibility, is for delivering the clinical trial data in a timely manner with the right quality that is expected for submissions to the regulatory authorities and for obtaining the approval of the new indication or the new product. So as you can see here, there are no more responsibilities on one side or the other. Both teams are working very with a lot of responsibilities and important deliverables to make the new indications and the new products available for our populations. So it's important that each team respects the work of the other and try to collaborate in the delivery of the results of the other function. Next slide, please. So in this way, what I will describe is we identified which ways we identified as opportunities to support the clinical research objectives and the clinical research teams from medical affairs. So at the moment of the feasibility, this is when a study is being, a protocol has been developed, and the global teams are looking for countries and when they can and sites to implement the study. We can work in the feasibility. We can support the teams, the clinical operations teams in this feasibility process. First of all, training the clinical operations teams. So depending on the market archetypes, these teams, these clinical operations teams are the people working in these clinical operations teams could be medical or not, but it's important that from medical affairs we take the responsibility on training the clinical operations teams in the specific disease and which are and the indication and which are the medical needs that the indication and the new product will be addressing. And also, provided we can support the operations team, suggesting sites and investigators. And this is something that I would love to emphasize. We can suggest, but the ultimate decision, the last decision on the PIs and the sites involved is in clinical operations, because they are the specialists in understanding which are the qualifications that an investigator needs to have for being able to implement a trial. But it's always good to have a discussion about the sites and the PIs that we are pretending to include. And sometimes there are very good ideas coming from these conversations. But also from our side, from the medical affairs side, it's important to identify potential competition between the implementation of a clinical trial versus the marketing company strategy. This is a key aspect that we need to discuss, because at the end, the success of the marketing company is something that is involving different functions and different aspects of the commercial operation. So, and in general, medical affairs is deeply involved in the marketing company strategy more than the clinical operations teams that are not so connected with the commercial objectives. So these are important insights that we can bring to the conversation. During the initiations, the first phases of the clinical implementation, we can also collaborate in training the site staff, the investigators, the study coordinators, particularly in the management of the safety issues and the management of adverse events, but also in the resolution of medical doubts about the eligibility criteria for the procedures for during the study. And something that is key is engaging the site staff as a company. So it's not the same going to a site, going to having conversations with investigators and with the team in an isolated way, compared of going as a team where clinical operations and medical affairs share a joint approach. So this is pretty much engaging with the external world as well. During the study conduction, the way of supporting is, of course, with the continuous support on any kind of doubt that needs to solve in terms of the eligibility criteria or in terms of study procedures, but also understanding which are the main difference between the clinical practice and what is established by the protocol, because that resolution on the possible gaps in the clinical practice that will be making the adoption of the new indication possible will help us in the future in preparing the marketing companies for a successful launch. So this is related to the last part, that is risk management, in identifying these barriers and these challenges, where medical affairs is playing a key role. And also, as mentioned before, in establishing a referral network that guarantees the enrollment in time of the required number of patients per site as committed. So these are probably the main activities where medical affairs can collaborate with the clinical operations team. Next slide. But which are the advantages for us in medical affairs on participating in these activities? Well, we have a lot of advantages. I think I put here the four most important, in my opinion, that we will be building an extended panel of KEs, that is key external experts, is the people that external people we use to work in medical affairs. So we'll be incorporating PIs, investigators with experience, and with in our panel of external colleagues, and we have a unique possibility of discussing the product and indication in a proactive way in the pre-regulatory approval phase. In AstraZeneca, we respect the rules of not having proactive conversations on indications or products that are not approved, except in very, very few cases. And one of these cases is with investigators. Of course, with investigators, we need to be allowed to have this kind of discussion. So for us, it's a unique opportunity of having these early conversations and proactive conversations on the product and indications, and it's really insightful for us. At the same time, as mentioned, we will be able to identify in an earlier way which are the gaps between the clinical practice and what is needed for having a successful uptake of the new indication of the new products, and that will give us the possibility of having an earlier launch readiness preparation. So and the proper one customized to the needs of the country. We will have as a first advantage the creation of the building of advocates for the drug and indication, because when you are working in the development of a new indication and you are part of the team that was conducting the study, you become an advocate of the drug and the indication as a medical doctor. So this is something that is really true. So it's one of the advantages of having studies run in our own countries. And last but not least, we as a company, we will have a better and stronger scientific presence and positioning in the local network that includes the medical societies, the health authorities, and the general population in general. So giving the possibility of implementing clinical trials and delivering the trials in a successful way by working together is something that is for benefit of all of us. Next slide, please. But we have an important responsibility. So as we will be working in clinical research and supporting clinical operations, we need to have a minimum understanding on different aspects of clinical research job and responsibilities. So we need to be not a specialist, but we need to be informed in which means clinical development planning, as our colleague presented in the previous presentation, that was great, how to write a study design concept, how to write a study protocol, how to read. I recommend everybody to read one or two protocols in a complete way to understand which are the different aspects that should be included in a study protocol, but also in a study concept. So being able to summarize the most important principles of the study, how to conduct a study, which is the monitoring plan, which is the data management plan, which is the publication plan, so the statistics plan. So these are all components of the clinical research planning phase that will guide the successful implementation of a study, and also to understand the regulatory framework and which are the rules that we follow when we run and work in clinical operations, and of course, the most important guidelines for us comes from the ICH and GCP guidelines that I recommend everybody working in the pharma industry to read at least once, because there we have the responsibilities from the pharma industry, which are the responsibilities that we can delegate to a contract research organization, which are the responsibilities of the site and PIs, the IRBs, the ethics committees, the MOH. So it's really the ethics committee. So it's really key to have that kind of basic knowledge that also will serve us in the implementation of the medical affairs data studies, that like real world evidence studies or post-marketing authorization studies. So I think that I have my last slide in the next one, please, Apeksha. So at the end, everybody is having benefit from this joint approach. And I think that the first one and the most important is this is good for patients. So every time that we initiate a site, a team in clinical research, we are raising the bar. So the site, all the team will work in a better way, because implementing and working in clinical research is about following a protocol, is about working in a very structured way, and anything is forgot when you are working in clinical research. And this is key because the mindset of you as a medical doctor change. You are working with some parameters of high quality that are adopted for life. So we are raising the bar for the attention of our patients, offering a better standard of care, and also offering additional options with the new development, with the new technologies that we are studying in the clinical studies. And for the patients, sometimes with very severe diseases, this is giving a sense of purpose for them on their disease. They are offering something else for the ones that are coming later, even if they are not having the benefit at this moment, but they are collaborating to the development of new treatment options for others that we can and have the same diseases in the future. It's good for the health system because, as mentioned, improves the quality of work of the sites and the health environment, is giving access to innovation in earlier ways, and is also an opportunity for professional development. All of us are here because we are considering, or we consider at one moment, this as an additional possibility for our professional career. It's good for medical affairs because we are understanding how to implement the studies that we need to implement as medical affairs professionals. We are identifying in an earlier way enrollment barriers that will be the leakage points in the future for the commercial guys. So we are collaborating with the whole marketing company strategy. We are identifying the best advocates and for our products and indications, and we are obtaining early insights on the way of using these products from these proactive conversations that are allowed in this unique space. And for clinical operations, as mentioned, we can offer new sites, new investigators. Sometimes the clinical research is really crowded let's say the countries are really concentrating the studies for a given indication in 2 or 3 or 5 sites, and we can identify additional sites that are not so crowded of protocols and pharma presence, so we can facilitate the enrollment and also the development of new sites. We can facilitate a better engagement with specialists because from medical affairs we manage the pipeline and holistic approach from our company, and we can offer other projects as well, and we can co-create solutions to address the enrollment barriers and in that way to obtain the last objective that all of us pursued, that is to have more options through new indications for our patients suffering unmet medical needs. So with that, I will finish my presentation here, saying thanks to all of you for your kind attention. And I don't know if we have time for a couple of questions, Apeksha.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you so much, Dr. Susanna, for a wonderful presentation. Yes, we are behind time, so we can take 2 questions. Some of the questions can be taken for the next topic because I see that the questions are more relevant to the next topic, that is evolution of medical affairs. One question that they have asked is, can the faculty elaborate on the coexistence of medical affairs with pharmacovigilance and good clinical practice?
So let me repeat the question. So how we interact with pharmacovigilance, let me see.
Yes. And also about good clinical practice in medical affairs.
Okay, the pharmacologist must learn to speak what is
yeah, that's the question for the next. I think that would be better. The second question I've asked, can the faculty elaborate on the coexistence of medical affairs with pharmacovigilance and good clinical practice?
Well, pharmacovigilance is more on the side of medical affairs. So it's depending on the structure of a marketing company and the local team is under the responsibility of medical affairs, but it's not particularly the role of an MSL. We have in general, specific members of the team dedicated to pharmacovigilance in pharmacovigilance and medical information team. But depending on the requirements of when we submit a product, medical affairs could be responsible for implementing post-marketing authorizations studies to collect more information on the safety of a product. So in that way, that responsibility will be taken by the medical affairs teams.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much. I have one question that's come the other ways. Which was your preference, whether it was medical affairs or clinical research? Which was your preference?
I think that my heart is split in the 2 sides. Something that happened. So I really love the clinical research space. Is something that I loved in every aspect. I work as an investigator. I work as a monitor in the contract research organization. I work in the pharma industry with the responsibility of implementing studies. But something that medical affairs offer to me is the possibility of running my own studies. So collecting the insights from the practitioners on which additional questions needs to be addressed to have a successful adoption of a product or an indication, and in that way working by designing your own study, implementing your own study. That's something else that was given to me in the medical affairs function. And there are other really nice activities that we do in medical affairs. So I think that the cross collaboration is something always good, and I would recommend everybody to do something in clinical research, even if at the end we'll decide to move to medical affairs. Is something that is really adding value to the professionals working in medical affairs. Hello, Dr. Anil, a pleasure to see you here. a professor for all of us working in medical affairs. So maybe you can comment, Anil, on your preferences and what on your thoughts here.
Yeah, I think Susanna, you covered it very, very nicely. I think it's definitely all the roles have their own importance and also experiences it provides. At the same time, they are all impactful because we are definitely ensuring that the patient safety is taken care of. So patient is at the center of all the roles. So I'm sure every role, whatever we choose or we collaborate, definitely we are impacting the patient's lives. So you said it very nicely, Susanna. I just came to thank you as well for all your deliberations.
Well, thank you very much, Tim, and hopefully this is useful for people thinking in taking and embracing this pharma career. So congratulations for this great initiative. Thank you very much for having me here.
Thank you so much, Dr. Susanna, for that wonderful talk, as well as patiently answering those questions. Thank you for the tips as well. With this, let's go to the next topic, that is evolution of medical affairs and its impact. The major objective of PHARMASTEER is to make you understand of the roles and responsibility of a pharmaceutical physician in the industry. This session will help you understand how your journey will look like in the industry and how medical affairs as a role has evolved in a function. This will also help you in understanding the perspective from a key opinion leader on how medical affairs impacts them. For this session, we have Dr. Anil Kukreja, like I already said, Vice President, Medical Affairs and Regulatory at AstraZeneca India, more than 15 years of experience in various multinational companies, a strategic, visionary, and accomplished medical leader, having diverse experiences in pharmaceutical biotech industry, recognized for forming a very well-grounded, responsible, and committed medical team comprising of medical value. With this, we also have Dr. Sujay Ghosh, Professor of Endocrinology at IPGMR, Kolkata. He holds positions such as Honorary Editor, Journal of Indian Medical Association, National Joint Secretary, Indian Thyroid Society, National Joint Secretary, Research Society of Study of Diabetes in India, worked as a clinical faculty at the University of Glasgow, and has several international awards, including American Association of Clinical Endocrinology, International Clinician of the Year 2021, and WIDF Award for Innovation in Diabetes 2021. Please join in welcoming Dr. Anil Kukreja and Dr. Sujay Ghosh. With this, I give it over to you, Dr. Anil.
Thank you, Apeksha. And it is really an opportunity for us to have Dr. Sujay Ghosh along with us. What we will do is maybe initial few minutes, I will take you through the medical affairs function, how it has evolved over a period of time. And later on, we will have interactions on how Dr. Sujay Ghosh sees the value of medical affairs and how it has evolved over a period of time. But before starting my topic, I think my topic has been made very easy by the previous speakers and also during the inauguration when we set the context. And I think all the leaders, they joined together and they really talked so much high about the whole concept of this orientation of postgraduate medical students as well as medical students on medical affairs. As Apeksha rightly said in the beginning, I wish I had this orientation before joining the pharma industry. I missed this orientation, but I think it's good that we are creating this with the help of State GS Medical College as well as KEM Hospital. And I really want to thank once again the faculty of State GS Medical College and KEM for giving opportunity for all of us to interact with the students. I always believe when we interact with the students, you are also enhancing your own curiosity. So let me share my screen and take you through the presentation for the initial few minutes, maybe. Let me just see. Please tell me whether the screen is visible. Yeah?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, visible, sir.
Yeah, thank you so much. So, of course, these are my personal perspectives. This is the disclaimer. As all the leaders, we are sharing our own perspective. When I looked at the topic, actually, and thanks for giving this topic, I reflected on my own evolution because it has been almost close to 2 decades in the industry. And I, in fact, reflected on my own evolution, that how my evolution has been. And that's the evolution medical affairs have also had. But I'm seeing a lot of change because of the change in the healthcare system and the expectation from medical affairs. And I'll talk on those aspects as well. So this is my journey. If I look at my initial days when I joined fresh from the medical college, just like you are getting oriented to, I think the predominantly day-to-day job was more about answering the medical information queries, because you are the scientific person in the either the whole organization or maybe in the team or maybe in the business unit where you are supporting and working. So So all the medical questions coming both from internal as well as external all come on your table, and you need to answer them. And I'm sure that's something which is really fun, because you read a lot to answer those medical information inquiries. The second core function, of course, was at the beginning of my career, and that actually sets the foundation for all of us, is you have to train your sales colleagues. Because the entire revenue of the organization, in whichever company we work, the revenue comes from our sales colleagues. The sales colleagues go and disseminate the science in the clinic to the doctors, and we need to equip them with the way the science needs to be communicated appropriately, accurately, and in the unbiased manner. And that's where our training to the sales colleagues becomes very important. In addition, of course, we used to provide support to the marketing. They look forward for all the medical support in terms of any scientific support they need. They really come back to you. And it's almost on a daily desk job where you are working with the marketing colleague beside you and really contributing in terms of forming the whole communication strategy as well. At the same time, I think Susanna did mention about the medical monitoring. And sometimes you are also doing the medical monitoring of clinical trials. Very important is the scientific support to the top KOLs. And they really look forward to looking at the information they need, the literature they need, sometimes even the PowerPoint slides they need in case if they are presenting in some scientific conference. And they really basic work. Now you are involved more into you continue to have a peer-to-peer discussion with the KOLs, but more importantly, you start looking more into the strategy of, so you become, from a field role, you become a medical affairs manager, or you progress to even becoming a therapy area leader. Here, you are basically determining and forming the strategy for the whole therapy area or the indications in which your products are. You are also identifying the evidence gaps, and you're designing the evidence generation strategy. It could be the evidence generated from the real world, from the databases, or even from the registries, or maybe forming an interventional clinical trials. So that strategy needs to be discussed, brainstormed, getting all the inputs from the KOLs, and more importantly, partner with the healthcare organizations and key external experts as well to generate the evidence. And I think Susanna covered this topic very in details. I'll be focusing on the other aspects of medical affairs. Very important is, at least in India, I know, and I'm sure in some other countries also, we have to make a scientific presentation to the experts and the regulators to get the product approval, line extensions approval, additional indications approval. So that presentation is something which is provided. Again, that's the next level of expertise which you need, because you need to present the data in a very strategic manner to get the outcome from those 20 minutes of meeting. At the same time, you evolve to lead the people, you start mentoring the colleagues. Most importantly, as a strategic person, you need to lead and influence the BU strategy. So, and this is called as influencing without authority. You are purpose-led, you are leading the leaders, you have leaders reporting to you, and you have to really ensure that you are effectively looking at those rules. Most importantly, instead of influencing the franchise or a BU, now you evolve and you are part of the country leadership team, and you are influencing the organization strategy. You are also bringing the thought leadership to influence the ecosystem, and you are also contributing to shape the policies. And by doing that, you have to work with other industry collaborators also, like other industry colleagues as well. Now, let's reflect back. We all know that the past 3 years, we have significantly seen a change in the healthcare. And of course, this slide speaks by itself. It's self-explanatory. There is increasing burden of chronic diseases. We have all seen the impact of COVID-19. Very important
recording in progress
element which is there is digital and technical breakthroughs which have happened. I think those are important, and it is estimated that this digital health market will grow by 6 times by next few years. The expectation from more of a platform company, where expectation is that apart from the products, you also provide the service and also you generate the data, and at the same time you're contributing in the entire patient journey, right from prevention to the wellness. And not only you improve the patient outcomes, but the expectation now is how are the patient experiences? What is the value to the healthcare system? And that's what the new roles and the new evolution of the medical affairs also is. So again, if you look at the healthcare industry ecosystem, it has become more like a proactive, more and in the way where patient expects the care to be delivered. And those are the trends which we are seeing in the healthcare ecosystem as well. And these are the core capabilities. I'm sure we will speak more and the leaders will speak more about that. In the center, if you see, these are the core capabilities which I'm sure various speakers will be speaking upon. But the most important is the next capabilities which have emerged for the future. Digital innovation, definitely. The medical affairs role in access, and also collaborating with government affairs so that we shape the policies. And this cannot be done alone. We need to partner with the broad range of stakeholders, both internally and externally. And that's the role which medical affairs is definitely going to play more and more in the coming future. And these are the competencies we are looking for in the medical affairs leader. Most importantly, if I want to speak about it, of course, everything is important. And the next topic will emphasize on the patient centricity. We also need people who are displaying the enterprise leadership, not only scientific and technological leadership, but they are also important for building the team and influencing the team. And they bring the creativity, partnership, and communication as the core competencies for the future. So I think this is what I wanted to say. A few lines about the impact. Of course, that impact needs to be measured, but most important impact is if medical affairs is able to become a strong voice of patient, strong voice of science, and strong voice internally from the insights coming from key external experts. And this is required to shape the whole franchise, product, BU, and organization strategy. Very important for medical affairs to drive the belief change to elevate the clinical practice. A crucial is to generate the insights which shape the guidelines, policies, and also most importantly, it shapes the clinical practice. And we are talking about shaping the clinical practice not only in the individual clinics, but how can we shape the clinical practice in the entire healthcare ecosystem? And that's called as clinical practice change at scale. Of course, that cannot be done alone. We need to collaborate and partner and provide superior experiences to patients, the healthcare practitioners, the healthcare organizations, and most importantly, significantly improve the patient outcomes. And this is very important for medical affairs to start measuring the impact through the key performance indicators, through dashboards, and most importantly, how many patient lives we are touching through all our medical initiatives. And that's the key question which we need to start reflecting on and start measuring, start challenging ourselves and moving forward on that. I'll maybe stop here. And since Dr. Sujay Ghosh is here, I think it's important for us to have the interactions and learnings from Dr. Sujay Ghosh on, and I think I'll just take the few minutes. The introduction of Dr. Sujay Ghosh is there on the slide. He is the honorary editor for Journal of Indian Medical Association, National Joint Secretary of Indian Thyroid Society, and of course of eminent societies as well. He has won several international awards, and he is currently working as a professor of endocrinology. I visited him last month, and it was so inspiring to see the blend of basic research, the clinical research, and the clinical practice. And I think that was really inspiring for me, sir, to really visit your clinic and interact with you in the institute where you're practicing. So maybe I'll invite Dr. Sujay Ghosh. Sir, what do you think about medical affairs, how it has helped you in your day-to-day, I would say, working?
Right. Thank you very much, first of all, for having me on this program. Unsure how I fit in, though, in the world of such experts in the medical affairs. So if you look at how things have evolved, say, for example, in day-to-day practice and how it helps me now and compared to what it used to help me in the past. So if I first look at that journey, because I was a junior internist, then an endocrinologist, and the way medical team of various companies have helped me support through my career was, times have changed, like both yourself and the previous speaker, Susanna, was talking about. It was initially about, say, providing us with product information, or maybe me as a clinician asking about specific situations in which I was unsure about medical treatment. What should I be doing? What's the evidence in this particular knowledge gap area, where people would, dig up whatever they could find on the internet, maybe collate it and then send back some results to us so that my clinical care and patient outcomes would improve. Then as a junior doctor at point of time, you always wondered, the patient that I've seen right now, is this someone who's worth writing up a case report? And they, the good old medical team would tell us, there are 1 million more case reports regarding the same, which would actually enhance my knowledge and mellow down my enthusiasm maybe to some extent. But what was important was we would get information, which, unlike today's world of internet, is not necessarily truth. It was relatively dependable information that we would get. And, we didn't, as juniors and as students, have access to, say, a full article or full clinical trial data. So that was what was mostly what we used to get in our younger days. Now, as time has evolved, things have become more competitive for someone in medical affairs, because the day a particular trial is being discussed, you can sit at home and actually watch what's happening in the United States and even get access to the article that got published that very particular day. So it would take a medical affairs person much more insight in providing what information he was going to provide me with whatever my queries were. And we've moved on, not from individual publication, but also to what I would call synthesized data. So the medical affairs team now actually has to have access to that as well. I'll just give you an example. UpToDate is one such resource. So if I ask something centered around a particular molecule, not only am I expecting that particular clinical trial data the medical affairs would provide me, but what is happening around that therapy area? What else in terms of whether it's investigation, whether it's management, and other things as well. And a lot of times, in particularly country like India, a classic example is, say, the DPP-4, SGLT2 or GLP-1s. You have multiple companies with multiple people coming and telling you multiple different things about their molecule and the molecule perhaps that another company is promoting. And there's a lot of misinformation that goes around. So there needs to be clarification of that misinformation as well when it comes to multiple sources of information. And of course, I think some of you would have read recently that in terms of medical literature, the internet, 25% of the news is actually fake. So, I would actually bank on someone who I can trust to figure out what is actually right and what is actually wrong. And the other thing, like you were pointing out in terms of what's happened during this pandemic, is we've all learned that we need to live in the virtual world, whether we like it or not. Whether that loses a bit of the human touch that's there is a different issue, but we will have to live with it. But it's also taught us a few positives, that not necessarily do you always have to have a face-to-face contact. You can always, connect with someone virtually, get an understanding of what's happening. And of course, at the end of the day, I would like that bit of human touch as well, at least from some point of time to the other. I would want that, I get in touch with the medical affairs person. And what has also happened in recent times, which hadn't happened previously in terms of medical affairs, was we start talking about a therapy area much before even a product is launched. You will remember Astra as a company talked about SGLT2 and diabetes maybe a year and a half before the product actually got launched. You look at Novo Nordisk, they're going to launch medication related to obesity. So they are, creating that space. So that's a very important area in which I think it helps me as well to know what's coming, so that I know that, I'm mentally being prepared, even as a KOL or so-called KOL, that, this is a space that I need to watch and I need to keep reading up more often. So this is what I would think is two of the major things that's happened in terms of what it used to be in the past and what it is to me at this point of time.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Sujay Ghosh. I think you really touched upon a very important point. One, of course, is how do we need to evolve in the future in terms of synthesis of the data rather than just providing the data. At the same time, I think very important is how do we bring forward the validated information, which is factual, and it removes that 25% fake information. I think that's really important. At the same time, I think it was important what you really brought forward is how do you shape the market in terms of 1.5 to 2 years prior to that. So I was also interested, sir, what about your research? And in your research and also data generation, are there any examples where your collaboration has really helped with the medical affairs? And it does not have to be only AstraZeneca, sir. We are talking in general about the medical affairs,
right?
And we are talking to the students. So any examples or industry-leading examples where
plenty. If you look at research, you can look at it at the various facets of research. For example, the boys and girls who work for me as clinical coordinators right now, or the quality manager and others. So all of the GCP training has been done predominantly with the help of the medical team of various companies. For example, Pfizer, Abbott, these are two companies who are very, very proactive in doing such programs in terms of, the GCP, ICP, GCP, ICH, GCP training programs for the boys and girls, whether they're working in, drug trials, whether it's investigator-initiated, whether it's, regulatory trials, or even for clinical research of whatever sorts that I'm doing, because, clinical research can be epidemiological research, basic science research. Everybody needs to know all of that. Now, in terms of other trials, I think several of the medical affairs people have actually connected me to their team of research and asked, we've got a trial like this coming. So would you be interested in this? Particularly the ones who are relatively close to me, they know what facilities I have, knowing that, this is something that is feasible and doable. That is one aspect. The other issue is when I'm thinking of an investigator-initiated study, which I've done several times. It's not a so-called investigator-initiated study which a lot of companies nowadays do just to bypass a lot of the other regulatory requirements. I'm talking about specific investigator-initiated studies, which I've done where I've got help from medical affairs teams of some of the companies. They have often helped me with the literature search, the writing up of the protocol, the case record forms, the creation of the consent forms, and I might have written it up, and then I've gone back to them and asked them, you've got experts in your team. Can you ask them to actually have a look at what I'm doing? Is there anything wrong there in what I'm doing? And additionally, help me connect to other people that they know are actually into clinical research or data. So whatever I'm trying to do, I know that I would not have enough numbers here. They would say, oh, hang on, I know that doctor in Mumbai who has a similar kind of interest. Would you like to speak to him or her? So that's actually helped create that bit of that research network. So literature search, inputs in designing, even writing up the grants proposal, and of course, setting up the database. And once the data is there, sometimes if my statistician is too busy, helped with the data analysis, and even in writing maybe the first draft of the article that I've thought of actually going in terms of research. In terms of basic science research also, some of the friends in the industry have told me, that particular company is coming up with this kind of research grant in that particular therapy area, which you can probably apply for and even get. So, and of course, real world data. Several of the companies where it might have been initiated by the company per se, or some of them have been actually initiated at my insistence, saying that, you have so many contacts with so many people, X, Y, and Z. This is something that we have. Does this drug really work that well in our particular scenario? Or is this drug worth looking at in another indication? I'll just give you an example. For female sexual dysfunction in Sheehan syndrome, we've done a drug trial of DHEA. No company has any business interest in it, but one of the particular pharma companies actually helped me, design that particular randomized double-blind crossover trial, and it's published in JCM. So it's a win-win situation. It's a learning experience for me, and of course, I'm sure it's like Susanna was talking about. It's actually, research is the most exciting bit of any job, not clinical work, research.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Sujay Ghosh. I think this is really remarkable. In fact, you gave the examples which will also be inspiring for not only our team, and I'll take that message even for our team as well, but I'm sure the students who are listening, they really get a nice perspectives about what they should look up to when they join the pharma industry. And these are the industry leading examples which you really shared. Any sir, concluding message from you, particularly looking at the evolution of the whole healthcare ecosystem? Any concluding message which you want to pass on to our colleagues who are listening, and also to the students who aspire to join the medical affairs in pharma industry?
I think this is one profession that I might have chosen had I not come into clinical practice, or I still might if I lose my job. So it's actually a very exciting profession. It's unfortunate that not all companies have got a good medical team. I wish particularly the Indian companies actually have medical teams, proper medical teams, not just having one just for the sake of having a medical team. You see several of Indian companies employing these young graduates as if, to complete or tick boxes. And they probably don't get the respect that they actually deserve there. But I'm at least glad that some of the MNCs are supporting these boys very well, because it's them who actually help us to provide better care and better understanding and better knowledge. The other thing that I would actually say is that this is a very evolving role. And if people start thinking of that, X, Y, and Z is the only role that I have, I think they are wrong. Particularly people who have done well, companies whose medical affairs people have done well, are people who have actually gone and helped do that extra bit. For example, helping with development of soft skills for the doctors. There might be many people who would want to do better presentations. There'll be people who would want to do better soft skill courses like how to read a paper, how to write a paper, statistical analysis, how to do a meta-analysis. So those would be, at least there will be a proportion of your so-called future KOLs who will want to learn those soft skills. And, unfortunately, our undergraduate and postgraduate and postdoctoral curriculum does not necessarily always cater to that. So who do we look up to at that point of time? You are the people that we will be looking up to, or the juniors would be looking up to, in terms of development of these skills, which will actually help discriminate the good from the very good from the outstanding in terms of clinicians, doctors, KOLs, and super KOLs. So learn soft skills and be good teachers. Teach us. At least some people will actually want to learn about it. And the second thing is go beyond your product, because people tend to be, I am supposed to look at this product or this therapy area only. Don't do that. Go beyond that, because the wider base that you have, the better you will be in terms of delivering what is actually needed out of you. And like I said, we as clinicians also need to make the medical affairs person feel wanted. I'm aware of a lot of people who actually don't do that, as if it's a demanding thing. I've asked you to provide me with this, so don't get upset. There'll be all kinds of people in life, but do well and keep the passion going in terms of whatever you do, whether you are going to write a book on the soft skills that I talked about, whether you're going to help somebody, collaborate with somebody in terms of clinical research, think of ideas, imbibe, soak in whatever knowledge you can in the conversations that you have with every healthcare professional.
Thank you so much, sir. I think this has been really, you in fact took the topic further than what I presented actually. What's the evolution subsequently beyond this point, what I really presented. But I'm really thankful to you for your time. I think, I don't know, Apeksha, if we have time for questions.
I think we can take one question. Dr. Anil, I've shared the questions to you as well. Sure. There's one question, Dr. Sujay Ghosh and Dr. Anil, we would need your guidance as well. The question is, every KOL of a different specialty speaks a different language that a pharmacologist must learn to speak. What is the faculty's take on the above?
Maybe
if I could answer that. See, for example, I'm an endocrinologist. I would know nothing about dermatology or something like that. See, most of the skills as you grow, and as you grow in whatever capacity you do, is generic. Your ability to communicate, your ability to understand, and your ability to respond to situations is going to be generic. Now, in terms of a particular specialty, if you're working, you will very quickly have to learn the bits related to that particular specialty, which should not be a great challenge, because you have, whoever is coming into this particular role already has some baseline knowledge. Now you're looking at that particular therapy area, and you've got to read. There's no replacement to reading and learning and continuing to learn, unlearn and relearn. So that you have to do. So if you're sticking to one particular therapy area as a medical liaison officer or whatever, it's perhaps easier after a while, but it's also boring after a while. You're talking about the same product. I'm sure Bharat is listening to me here as well. He would say the same as well. So you might want to move from one area to the other at times, because that actually expands your vision, your horizon, and also your understanding. Because what Dr. Anil is doing now, like he said, he has a big influence on the business, the BU head, right, in terms of strategy. So if you are in different areas, it's actually going to be useful to you. For example, if I have to give two major examples is, so I don't know how many of you know of the Tunda program that Novo Nordisk did, which actually created diabetologists. MSD tied up with PHFI to create new diabetologists. Now, I know the two people who were actually behind the idea. They were medical liaison officers who actually understood that if I have to create a new market, I have to think of a new strategy in an area where neither of them had worked. But they knew that, say, for example, some new company comes into say insulin business. I'll give you an example, because Cipla came to me a couple of days ago asking, we've got these new insulins, but we are unable to sell it. So what do we do about it? The competition is too big. Novo Nordisk. So I told them that you look at people who are prescribing huge amount of OHAs, but not prescribing insulin. So that's your market. Go and target them. So this was a new medical guy who was actually never worked in insulin, but willing to listen. So the more exposure you have to different kinds of things in life, the more likely you're going to be successful.
Thanks, Dr. Ghosh. Dr. Anil, anything to add to it?
No, I think most important is listening and learning. And also, as Dr. Sujay mentioned, it's very important. You cannot be an expert in all the aspects. So it's important to acknowledge also, and sometimes go back, read, and come back again and have a meaningful discussion. Most important is, are we serving and providing superior experiences? I think we should not, if we are not aware, I think it's better to admit rather than just bluffing, right? So that's, I would say, we need to have a knack, and these are the soft skills I think Dr. Sujay Ghosh was saying. So we need to build soft skills within ourselves and definitely deploy and implement those soft skills as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much. With this, we finished the session on evolution of medical affairs and its impact. Thank you so much, Dr. Anil, for your patience in answering the questions, and as well as Dr. Sujay Ghosh for answering the questions as well. So we learned a lot as well, and I hope the students have learned from that particular session. With this, let's go to our next topic, patient centricity in medical affairs. This particular topic is something which is very, very close to my heart. And I'm sure it will be to others as well, because we joined medicine as our career because we thought we can touch patients' lives, save patients, and make a difference in the society. However, when we joined MD Pharmac, we felt a little distant, and there was always this nagging thought. And now when we're thinking of pharmaceutical industry, the nagging thought that's there in our thoughts might be extended is what I feel the students will think about. To break this thought barrier, we have with us three eminent panel members: Dr. Mangesh Sheshrao Kamble, Asia Area Head, Women's Cancer and Therapy Area Lead, Oncology, Medical, AstraZeneca. He has more than 17 years of experience in various multinational companies and joined AstraZeneca in the year 2019 and has been heading the Oncology Medical team in India. Dr. Sachin Ravindra Joshi, Therapy Area Lead, Respiratory and Immunology in AstraZeneca India. He has been heading the respiratory and immunology team for more than 4 years and has experience in various pharma multinational companies. Dr. Bharat HS, Therapy Area Lead, CVRM, medical doctor with MBA in marketing. He has more than 12 years of experience majorly in medical affairs and has been heading the CVRM team since more than 1 year. Welcome for this session, the three eminent speakers, Dr. Mangesh, Dr. Sachin, and Dr. Bharat. So let me ask each one of you what patient centricity means to you. Dr. Mangesh, I would start with you.
Thanks, Apeksha, and good evening, everyone. I think it's always a great opportunity when you're talking with such a eminent audience who is like going to be a eminent faculty as well in future. So I think it's really relevant to get the basics right. And whatever we do, I think patient centricity is the essence. And for me, we should live patient centricity. So what does it mean to everyone? It's basically the mindset. It's the mindset which drives everyone. So I think whatever we do in our day-to-day practice as a doctor, as a medical professional, it's in a way related to patient centricity. I'll just give an example over here. When I joined MD Pharmacology, I completed MD Pharmacology, and most of my friends started asking me, who are not from the medical background. So they started asking me, where is your hospital? Where are you practicing? And not even my friends, my family, relatives, everyone, where are you practicing? And then I have to give some weird answers. Yeah, that's a organization which I'm working with. Then they say, oh, you are not a practicing doctor. So it's not about what do you do as a medical professional. It's basically how do you contribute to the patients as a medical doctor. Even today, my kid asks me that, Dad, my friends ask me, what does my dad do? And I say he's a doctor. Then they ask me, where is his hospital? Where is he practicing? And I have no answer to that. But then I'd like to share one example wherein I was in the new product ideation team of one of the organizations. And there were almost 10 molecules we had finalized. But out of that, I gave a green signal, go, no go decision for, or rather a go decision for one molecule. And it succeeded and finally got launched in India. It was a Japanese product and it was not even approved in US and EU, but the Indian patients, looking at the prevalence and incidence, they would have benefited much. And one fine day when I was at a medical shop, I saw that product in the rack on the pharmacist rack over there. And I felt proud for myself. Haven't I taken that initiative of yes, going for this particular product when I was a part of the new product ideation team? That product wouldn't have landed that in that patient, in that pharmacist track. And that's what a medical pharmacologist does. It may be in a way or the other, but ultimately it's the patient who gets benefited at the end. So that's what's patient centricity for me. Sorry for the long answer.
No, of course not. I could relate to each a sentence that you mentioned. Thank you so much, Dr. Mangesh, for that. Now, let me ask Dr. Bharat the same question. What does patient centricity mean to you?
Right. So playing at a non-striker end, like, right. And since Mangesh already started off, I think he has covered it all. And if we just put AstraZeneca's, I think we look at our vision, or we create our vision and vision statements. And especially for medical affairs, when you look at it, it starts with the patient. So how do we transform patient lives? Meaning it tells us that the reason of our existence is that the outcomes of the patients probably would change in a better way. Probably that's where we are looking at. And this is an industry, or this is a function where we are not interacting, or we were not interacting at large, or on a scale of probably from a time allocation point of view, out of your 100% of the time, you won't be spending majority of your time with the patients, but you will be spending majority of your time through the channels which would potentially lead to the patients, right? Be it your marketing team, what the kind of strategies they make, right? So is it patient centric? Is there going to be a better patient outcome because of this particular strategy? For example, if you look at our own portfolio which we are catering to, which Dr. Sujay Ghosh mentioned, SGL2 inhibitors, right? So what kind of a thought process we need to inculcate in the probably the head, starting from head office, which gets cascades to the sales team and subsequently transferred to the HCPs and then thereby to the patients. So that's the channel which we'll have to look at, right? So bringing that patient centricity in our meaning, taking patient as a whole, and how do we address his particular concerns? It may be related, finally it may lead to the prescription of the product, but are we helping enough to cover the entire solution? If not, beyond the product, what you can give? I think that's also one thing which we are living in that particular life, saying that yes, pill you are giving it, you're solving certain problems, but beyond that, what you can give so that you can make that journey complete. So are we talking about the product here? No. Are we talking about the disease? To a large extent, yes. But are we talking about the patient? Yes, to 100% extent. But that's the vision which we'll have to live through. And we are on that way, probably in many of the reputed companies like AstraZeneca, I think, getting that and putting the patients first. And even our value statements, if you look at what does it say? We say we put patients first. And what does it mean? We are proud to serve the patients, and in every decision which we take, it should be patient centric, right? And it should cater to the good number of population. For example, we are living in India, so how does it help the Indian patients? From that perspective, we need to think. And if I just reflect upon what Susanna spoke about, the entire research one, I think there's a lot more to do to bring patient in every column which in those slides, right?
Sure. Thank you so much, Dr. Bharat, for that. And I could relate to that as well. Sorry, Dr. Sachin has some technical problems, so he would be joining soon. So we'll ask the same question to Dr. Sachin later on, maybe. But now let's ask Dr. Mangesh the next questions. So, Dr. Mangesh, what, according to you, are the pillars of patient centricity?
Okay, as I said, Apeksha, patient centricity is basically a mindset, and we have to think through this mindset when we are looking at a patient. Imagine an hospital wherein we have all the stakeholders over there. We have the doctors, we have the nurses, we have the admin staff, we have the ICU in place, we have the cath lab in place, everything in place, and we don't have the patients. So what do? So similar is the case. Imagine a pharma industry or a pharmaceutical organization wherein we have everything, but we are not thinking about the patients, or we are not aiming at the patient needs. Then I think we are missing the we are missing the crux. So basically, whenever we are saying the pillars, I think access comes first. So how can we provide the access to diagnostics as well as treatment to whatever is the best treatment available at that moment to the patient from our end? Second comes, I think most important is the empowerment. How do we empower the patients? Because currently, if you even see now in India, the patients are not empowered much in the treatment decision making. So whatever the doctor says, the patient blindly or just listens and just follows it. But then if we make the patient aware about what are the treatment options available, if we make the patients aware what is the disease process like, what are the various options available for diagnostics as well as treatment, I think that becomes an important pillar. So I'll reiterate myself or repeat myself. It's access. Second comes empowering the patient, and third is awareness. And most importantly, cohesively, if all things fall in place, I think this will also help in influencing the government and the policymakers. So at the end, when the patient has to get benefited, I think all these things coming together, we can also help in policy shaping in a way or the other. So I think those are the critical pillars for patient centricity. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Mangesh. And I cannot relate more on awareness. Sometimes, especially in India, I feel that doctors do not ask the patient of what they would need. In fact, just tell them that this is what is required. So thank you so much, Dr. Mangesh, for that. Dr. Sachin and Dr. Bharat, to that particular question on what are the pillars of patient centricity, do you feel that you need to add anything on that?
I think Mangesh has covered all. So, yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. Dr. Sachin, I know you had a technical problem, so I'll ask two questions together. The first being, what does patient centricity mean to you based on your opinion? And the second question would be, what are the different functions involved in patient centricity? Over to you.
Yeah, sure. Sorry for the disconnection. It was at exact time when I was projecting my camera. And firstly, I think I would express my gratitude towards the dignified teachers, because I think they have made us, and we are again talking in front of them. Yeah, regarding patient centricity, I think that it would be anything and everything that or any action, that will help prevent or treat or optimally manage any disease in a particular person. So for patient centricity, I think it can vary. The act may vary for different stakeholders. It can be from medical department to marketing to legal. Any of the departments can play different roles. But finally, if it is either preventing or helping treatment or even optimizing the outcome in any patient's any disease, I think that is called as patient centricity.
Sure. And what are the different functions in patient centricity according to you, sir?
So I think it adds to what I answered prior, so every function would enable that prevention or treatment or optimal management of the disease in any particular patient. So for example, regulatory function, regulatory function helps to give access, give approvals, right? Take approvals for the medication so that they are available for the treatment. Then comes the medical treatment, who tries to educate and run different CME programs so that the data is spread across the clinicians and they know how to use it, which is the right patients. If you go further, you will also have patient safety department or clinical trials department. So if you see, clinical trials also plays an important role in terms of getting the data in that particular set of ethnic population. For example, in India, there might be some need for establishing the safety and efficacy again, right? So that is another. So that is also one function that plays quite a good role in patient centricity. Then comes patient safety, of course, because sometimes it might be that due to ethnic differences, there might be safety signals, and that is an important part, I would say, of patient centricity, because it should not be only what is the product useful in, but it should also be that whether it is really safe in that particular population, if any safety signals are coming out of a particular population. So that function also plays an important part. One more function is quality, which is again very important in India perspective and various other countries. You have recently heard a lot of counterfeit medications news, right? So even if it is not directly related in day-to-day practice of giving a therapy to the patient, but this is also very important, quality and legal department, because they will also ensure that the patients are getting medications which are really true medications. They are not something which is stuffed into a foil and which is not really appropriate drug. I would also say one more thing is supply chain, because supply chain is another thing that they have to forecast. Many of the medications are
imported medications. So they have to forecast that which medications, what quantity should be available in the country. We have seen during COVID, right, there was dearth of various medications, dearth of vaccine, etc. So I think this is an unprecedented situation, but why it doesn't happen day to day is because of supply chain, because they forecast it very appropriately, and the medications are being made available to the people in the country. So I think from these are some of the functions, I really think of. And of course, last but not least, the marketing and sales people, because these are the people who would again position the medication in the right profile of the patients, and they would also connect between the medical affairs and the doctors. So I think these are quite many functions. Again, just to say that this is these all are working for patient centricity. The action would be different, and therefore whatever their role covers will be the patient centricity for them. But yeah, ultimately everybody is working for patients.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Sachin. I hope the students who are listening understand how in a pharmaceutical industry, different functions work for patient centricity. Dr. Mangesh and Dr. Bharat, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah,
Yes,
I think one of the most important stakeholder here, I don't know if I missed that. Sorry, Sachin, but
medical affairs.
No, I think the practicing physicians as well, they need to be more patient-centric, because ultimately they are the decision makers when it comes to offering the treatment options. So I think they should be more patient-centric and should also be actually the reinforcement for this patient centricity can happen from the industry as well, so that they give the best treatment and the right treatment to the right patient. So I think that's also very critical for the KEs to be patient centric. And when we say KE, key external expert, now is the term which is coming up, which is PCE, which is the patient centric expert. So I think that's really more of a identification from our end. We should identify, track and trace these KEs, and then try to build more patient-centric experts so that the patient benefits at large.
Yeah, and if we are just going external, Mangesh, out of our pharma domain, then of course to add to what you said, policymakers, right, in government, that also add to the patient centricity comes there as well. Quickly taking decisions and making policies which are beneficial. The hospitals and hospital management, again, that becomes very important.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Sachin and Dr. Mangesh. So you did hear to how many functions play a role in patient centricity, but I would request Dr. Bharat to tell what is medical's crucial role in patient centricity.
Right. Yeah, Peksha, medical has a critical role, right? So I'll complete. It has a crucial role for sure, because as Sachin mentioned, meaning, or even Mangesh mentioned, it's a mindset. Correct. And each and every function within the pharmaceutical, I think that has a role. When we think of pharma company, at least for layman, what do we remember? Just a sales representative, right? Reaching, probably knocking the doors of vision and trying to reach out there. Correct. So primarily it could be that, but there are a lot of other functions which are working both in front end as well as in the back end, which are enabling both the entire ecosystem of this. So all these functions matter a lot, but who is the one who drives it, or the engine of it, right? So probably I would take the case that it is medical affairs function here, and thanks that other cross-functional teams are not there. Otherwise, they'll also come and bang on and say, why aren't we patient-centric? We are also doing it. We do more than you, right? Second come. So we all work, but yeah, medical affairs is the one which would probably act as a catalyst for the entire functions within the pharmaceutical industry. And probably even if you go to the external environment, we would do that. For example, meaning we would good old days of 2017, 2018, right? Wherein we started talking about heart failure and type 2 diabetes. We just started. Till then, diabetes, or even the most of the cardiac complications, what it is, it used to be MI. Heart failure, the elephant in the room. We did so much of campaigns internally as well as externally. We nudged the internal team to talk more about the cardiorenal complications rather than glucose control, because you go and talk about glycemic reduction to the HCP is happy, patient is happy, they prescribe. Correct. But is that the end? No, because there are a lot more which we could do for that patient who is probably living through that disease. Hence we went and even today we get complaints that you are not focusing on glucose, but our theme is beyond glucose, because we want the patient to survive. I recollect one of the global thought leaders saying, Mr. Some name, probably a Mr. Smith or whatever it is, right? HbA1c of 6.5% on a particular class of drug and died at the age of 55 years. So is that what we need? No, right? So we need that, and thanks to the existing, probably the scenario of things, because when the products are coming, so who is the one who is starting to work, who is the first one to work on that particular product? It would be medical along with the cross-functional teams. And whenever since it's a product is always to address a particular disease, right? So then they want to know more about the disease, then they want to know more about the patient experiences, then they want to fit in where it solves, and what is the India landscape, what kind of evidences are there, what kind of evidences we need to create for each and every filler of this. Who is the one probably who acts as an internal consultant or as an active team member who drives those things as a medical? So right from like what Mangesh quoted an example, whether a go or a no go kind of a thing to a drug, or from when we want to launch a drug at any cost, even if it is the case, how does it fit into the India healthcare system or the local healthcare system, right? And what are the unmet needs here? What is the competitive landscape? What is the journey of the physicians as far as that particular disease is concerned? How much the patients are aware? So for this entire nudging of these functions, I think that is done by medical affairs. So medical affairs acts as a pivot, and with the help of other functions, I think we'll be able to come out this sort of outcomes, so that finally the products are there, the disease is covered, and the patients outcomes are much better. And we thereby during this process we are also enabled, right? We since we this is not a meaning a typical position where you execute certain things. You can change the landscape of certain things. For if you are in the seat of where you could design some of the studies, so can you bring in some patient related outcomes during that particular disease? So talk to your clinical team, the teams which are working there. So the patient and the patient experience endpoints, the patient related outcomes, that is one of the words which we hear. So can you inculcate that even for the local set of patients? So these thought processes, I think these influencing which we could do, and we could train the entire all the functions within the company or as well as outside of the company, so that we reach to some meaningful milestone as far as that product as well as the disease is concerned. So overall, medical, I would say, is the role. You can do that role, because I have done certain stints in my earlier jobs where there was no one but only medical, right? So there was no one else. There was no BU head, there was no marketing, and there was only one person medical. Though MSL, MA, MAM, everything, I used to do the business case presentation. So the reliability on a medical person is far more compared to other functions as on date.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Dr. Bharat, for relating on how medical plays a crucial role. Dr. Sachin and Dr. Mangesh, since the examples that were from CVRM, do you have anything to add to it, Dr. Sachin and Dr. Mangesh?
No, I think nothing specific. Yeah.
Perfect. So let's go to the next topic. That is, although Dr. Bharat did mention on CVRM, but what other best practices or practices that have happened in the past, other examples, other companies incorporating patient-centric initiatives? I would ask Dr. Mangesh this particular question.
Okay, so I think I'll be quick over here. So I'll give you an example just to relate on what did we do from the patient-centric front. And this is not the entire thing which we have done, but one of the things when we say patient-centric approach. And I'll share one example on an initiative, and I'll also share an example on a patient-centric approach. So first, talking on a patient-centric initiative. Over the years, I think almost till 14 years, more than 14 years of career in pharma industry before I landed in AstraZeneca, I had been working with various organizations, and whatever we used to do, it was only the advisory board meeting wherein we involved the oncologist or doctors or the physicians. But here in AstraZeneca, when we talk about patient centricity, we started off a unique initiative wherein we conducted for the very first time a patient ad board. Imagine the patient sitting as the panelist, the caregiver sitting as the panelist, and we moderating, or the oncologist, sorry, I'm speaking only from the oncologist perspective over here, but it can be any practicing physician. So the oncologist moderating the panel, and the questions going to the patients, and patients addressing those questions, and patients raising their concerns, and patients raising their challenges. So I think that that's basically what's happening at the grassroots level. We get to understand what are the challenges the patients are facing. Now, we don't want to address each and every challenge, but at least we know what are the pain points, and somehow if we can include that in our medical strategy, or in our business strategy, or in our organizational strategy, I think even if we move a needle a bit, I think it will be a major thing which will happen at the patient's end. So proudly we conducted, and we have been conducting across portfolios now, including Bharat's team as well as Sachin's team. So we are conducting patient advisory board meetings. We have conducted patient advisory board meetings wherein we get to understand the patient's perspectives, and we start marching towards addressing those concerns. So that's one of the examples of our patient centricity initiative. And if I have to say about the patient centric approach, so everyone might be aware, or if you're not aware, we get approvals for our molecules in India once we present the data for or rather the phase 3 data for our products which have happened globally through the global clinical trials. When we present this data to our SEC, which are the subject expert committee at the CDSCO, they listen to it, they ask us question, they have a good debate, we have a good discussion around it, and once they are satisfied with that data, then they give us that approval for that particular molecule in India, conditioned to whatever phase 3 trial or phase 4 trial in Indian patients. So we had a SEC meeting coming up, and it was within a span of almost 3 to 4 days. They notified us, and you have to present this particular data. As a process in a MNC, we have to follow the process, and we have to get the slide decks approved from our global teams. But 3 days or 4 days was a very limited time span to get the slide decks approved by the global team, because it's a process. We have to follow our standard operating procedures. And then there was a situation wherein we thought, okay, let's give a pass, and let's apply for another SEC meeting maybe next month. By then we'll be ready with our slide deck as well, approved slide deck as well. But then our patient centric mindset came into play, and we thought, okay, we are delaying the access to the patients by another month. Imagine if the SEC approves this product in this particular SEC meeting, and the patients would get benefited earlier. So what can we do that we do not give a pass to this particular SEC meeting, and we go ahead presenting our data at the SEC meeting? So then we have our guide mentor as well over here, Dr. Anil, suggested let's approach the global and seek the already approved slide deck. So it might have been presented somewhere, right? It might have been presented in the US, it might have been presented in the EU. Let's get that already approved slide deck, and we'll present that already approved slide deck rather than we creating a slide deck, which usually makes sense. Like I'm comfortable preparing my own slide deck and presenting it, but then we had no time. So we adapted ourselves to the already approved slide deck, and within that 3 days we prepared ourselves and presented to the SEC experts. And luckily, fortunately, and since we had that patient centric mindset, and we had a good thought in mind, we got the approval as well. So imagine if we had given a pass and the patients would have got delayed access to treatment, but our patient-centric mindset, our approach, patient-centric approach helped gain access to the patients for that particular therapy in a timely manner. So that's one of the examples of patient-centric approach as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Mangesh. And as you started off, it's the mindset or the thought process. So how the thought process shifted when we started thinking of the access to the patient, that it might get delayed by a month, and then started thinking in the reverse manner. So that's an excellent example as well. Dr. Sachin and Dr. Bharat, anything to add to it, what Dr. Mangesh mentioned?
Yeah, I think there are some examples where in respiratory and immunology, so usually this is about inhalers and controlling the asthma, etc. And in fact, we had a similar way an ad board with the patients, and we could see that many patients are struggling so much to maintain their disease. But as a human habit, they are not daily adhering to their medications. They go to the medications only when they are in trouble. Otherwise, they'll not take their inhalers properly. And also around 80% of patients would take them incorrectly. So there were, for example, sometimes we find it very amusing, that the capsules which are given for crushing and inhaling sometimes patients swallow them, and take those. So these kind of things used to happen. So what we thought of is that, okay, what can we do which is beyond our own product, which is a inhaler in which you don't have any capsule, but you can directly open and inhale. So what we did is that we ran, along with academic institutions, a program called as Asthma Counselor Education Academy. And we trained more than 600 asthma counselors or technicians with the help of AIMS and CMC Vellore. And it was such a wonderful workshop that and after that, many of the counselors said that they have never practiced the kind of accuracy in educating the patients and giving them knowledge. And this really helps down the line. Some of the examples is that some patients which were labeled as severe asthma, they were called back and they improved significantly just by improving their inhaler techniques, etc. So I think this really adds. So it may not be always directly interaction with the patient, but these kind of things which facilitate optimal care. And this may not always be a doctor as well, but which can be a nurse, etc. Patient looks for many touch points, right? And even if we improve the skills and capacity of any of these touch points, I think that also helps.
Perfect. Thank you, Dr. Sachin. And looking at the burden healthcare professionals or healthcare practitioners have, the time to interact with the patient is very, very less. So such kind of initiatives also help, although we are not directly interacting with the patient, but indirectly we are helping the patient to get an optimal care. So thank you so much, Dr. Sachin, for that words of advice as well. The next question, I know India is, Dr. Bharat, before that, any additions to what Dr. Sachin and Dr. Mangesh mentioned?
Apeksha, similar examples do exist, meaning in our portfolio as well. So we would be knowing, as Mangesh already has spoken about it, and even Sachin has reiterated. I think we can pass on.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bharat. Moving on to the next question. India is totally different from the West, and we have a lot of challenges when it comes to interacting with patients in India. So, Dr. Sachin, what are the challenges when it comes to patient-centric initiatives or even interacting with patients when it comes to India when compared to the West? Dr. Sachin, over to you.
Yeah, I think basically, as you mentioned, interaction with patient itself. So we are medicos, but we are operating from a pharmaceutical company, right? Which has cells, which has targets, and which is of the medication. So this creates a conflict of interest. So whether we want to, and there is always, from a third person's perspective, there is always a conflict that if we interact with the patient, are we trying to impose or promote our medications, or is there an indirect concealed message behind whatever we are talking to the patients? Are we motivating the patients to choose a particular brand. And that's a big, I would say, obstacle even if the medical team has right intentions to interact. And that is rightly so, because it should be always whenever there is a conflict area, or whenever there is an area of any bias, we should always be careful. So that is one of the big obstacles, I would say. While in some of the countries, especially in US, direct to consumer interaction is allowed, and there you can really understand what are the pain points of the patients, or how they are finding particular outcomes of medications. There is also a drug advertisement which is allowed over there. So these are some, I would say, if we are not able to interact with the patients directly, that creates a gap in understanding. Sometimes we may assume that patients are getting benefited, or patients, many of their problems are being solved, and which may be wrong, just that they did not have, they did not speak up. But we assume that everything is going up well. So that is one thing. But I would say COVID has changed many things. In fact, I see a lot of opportunities opening now in terms of patient centricity, because if you say that pharma can really indirectly interact with the patients in terms of digital. For example, there are various tools, in video counseling, etc., in which the data can be captured, the information can be captured, and aggregate information can be then taken by the pharma company, so that they know what are the trends, what are the common problems of the patients. And secondly, I would say, India being different, I think I would say I would rate digitally India is much more advanced, now, in terms of how we cater to our patients, and that is something that pharma really can take advantage of, even if we are not directly interacting with the patient. For example, assisting in various patient access tools. So what we saw after COVID is that the healthcare can reach the patient's home. There can be home administration of medications, right? There can be in-house video consultation. The lab reports can be read from distance by doctors, so patient do not have to travel to and again show just to show the results. There is also now integration of artificial intelligence into this all this diagnosis. That's how the diagnosis is also becoming much more quick, much more accurate. And we have seen some of the softwares, even like Mangesh would know, they would diagnose the patients with some lung nodules, which is more accurate than even the radiologist, right? So I think in that term, I feel that India is even more on pretty ahead, and I don't think there is any hurdle now compared to Western world.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Dr. Sachin, for that. Dr. Mangesh and Dr. Bharat, anything to add to it?
I think just one point to add over here: the patient advocacy groups, as compared to the Western population, where they have a dedicated or well recognized, identified patient advocacy groups, maybe not across all the therapy areas, but the predominant ones which are focused. But India somehow lacks these patient advocacy groups, and more than interacting with the patients, it's much easier to connect with the patient advocacy groups, and the patient advocacy groups then can be the voice of the patient. So I think that's a way forward, and this will really help shape up patient centricity in India.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Dr. Mangesh, for that. There are some questions that's come in the chat box. However, that's not related to patient centricity, so we'll take it during various opportunities for pharmaceutical physicians in the industry. I'll, however, ask the last question to Dr. Bharat on what, according to you, should be the vision of patient centricity in the industry.
Apeksha, I'm not very capable of answering that question. Let me put that disclaimer, right? So what the future looks like, right? Patient centricity. For example, we know that in working with some incredible companies like AstraZeneca, we have never focused on the product. It always has been on the disease. Now it is evolving, because as Dr. Sujay Ghosh mentioned earlier, that information is already there. be it of the disease, be it of the product. Now, what else can you offer? Probably you need to come with some patient care solutions, right? We have already been doing it. For example, one of the things which Sachin did mention, the artificial intelligence part, in the screening of ECGs, we have collaborated with one of the partner called a Strikog, wherein we are able to get a record time of diagnosis in a real time way, rather, from the ECG perspective, because even now, even today, there are a lot of gaps as far as the ECG interpretation is concerned. So are we solving it? We are solving it to a good extent. On the other hand, Mangesh said the patient voice or the patient, probably the awareness is not that great. So there are good number of, with the digitalization, there are good number of opportunities where the boundaries have got probably a bit dimmer right now, and we could get access to those patient communities more. Right. So the increasing the awareness about the entire disease portfolio and what is happening, I think that is one space which medical has to work upon. And we have, when we went ahead with a patient centric kind of a solution or a patient centric kind of a project, we were able to do a historical collaboration with Indian Society of Nephrology, because when you say that this is the one which relates to the kind of changes, transforms the patient outcomes, because we know how much the kidney burden is there across the world, especially in India. The epidemiological figures, when you see it, is scary. It may be happening in the real world, the diagnosis and treatment or not, or the awareness may be low, but if you look at the figures, I think it's very scary. And nephrologists do know about it. When we went with a patient-centric solution, I think they accepted. Otherwise, they wouldn't have, meaning be it for the new launch of a pipeline kind of products or related to the disease, if you had gone, the chances that they would have accepted is less likely. Right. So more and more patient-centered solutions needs to keep coming, and the rate of digitalization as well as the artificial intelligence, this will have a more in a meaning we have worked in just bits and pieces across it because it is one of our activities right now. But going forward, those would be the major activities which we will do. Talking just about the disease or the product, I think it will be very less, rather than that, talking about those solutions and what it means to the patients, and what are the different pieces which we can add along with the information, and that makes more meaningful to the clinicians. I think that's where it will go. So making slide decks, CMEs, visits to the doctors, around the pill, talk just about the information, I think this will become in bits and pieces, whereas that will carry major component. If I envision it future, again, as I said, I'll reiterate my disclaimer, I am not very capable of answering that question.
Thank you
Yeah,
so
I'll just
much.
want to add, Apeksha,
Yes,
one
Dr.
point. I
Sachin.
think what Bharat said, this is very important for future aspirants for who are coming to pharmaceutical industry. So I think that inculcation and knowledge of how artificial intelligence, how automation will work in pharmaceutical industry and patient care, if they start getting more information, more knowledge about that, I think they would be more future ready. So I think that is one point that they should start focusing.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Sachin. With this, I hope the students understand what our role is in patient centricity and how directly or indirectly we do help in the patient outcomes. With this, we end up the day one of PHARMASTEER third session, third consecutive year. And thank you so much, Dr. Bharat, Dr. Sachin, as well as Dr. Mangesh, for an excellent discussion. Thank you, everyone who have joined us as well live. Thank you again. Let's join again on the day 2, that is 26 November on 2 p.m. Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. Bye.